In Virtuosity, Russell Crowe plays a psychotic artificial intelligence who finds a way into the real world. Denzel Washington plays an ex-cop but current convict, and he's the only man who can hunt him down. This is a wild mid-90s sci-fi action movie that we cannot wait to talk about. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David, 6.3.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about sci-fi movies. It's that simple. And on this episode, we are reviewing a film from 1995. It's called Virtuosity, starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe, which is crazy that I had heard of this before we'd done it, right? Yeah. But I only heard of it for the first time maybe like a year or two ago. This one somehow escaped me, like despite the fact that I consumed a lot of 90s movies growing up and have continued to do so. But this was the winner of a Patreon vote. There was 3 90s cyberpunk-esque movies up for vote, and this was the winner of the options. So that is what we're going to talk about today. We'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers. And if you are enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch. And of course, you can support the content and get bonus episodes or bonus shows over on Patreon, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, Virtuosity is set in a... I don't think it determined exactly how far in the future it was.
No, it was very vague, but it's definitely some point... Actually, no. It says here, in the year 1999.
Oh, okay, all right.
According to the Wikipedia article, I don't know where they got that from.
They thought 4 years was going to be the amount of time it took to get to this technology.
Yep.
Did they? Okay, interesting.
Well, to be fair, I mean, if you're looking at the rapid pace of technology back in the 80s to 90s, I think it's this is a bit short, but it's not unreasonably short to say that we wouldn't be at some level of virtual technology with all the leaps and bounds.
I feel like you just safeguard yourself, even though one day, yes, you'll hit the date that the movie said it was and it won't match up. It just feels like it's safer to say it's like 30, 40 years in the future, just to cover yourself. However, I get the 2 reasons why they did this. One is because, well, we don't have to alter how the world looks too much if it's only 4 years in the future, so that saves some money. And 2, in the mid-90s, there was nothing more cooler sounding than 1999, because that was like the turn of the century kind of thing.
I mean, you say that, but I think the 2000 itself, because I remember all those movies were like, in the year 2000.
But that's the thing, though. I think either 99 or 2000, because it was seen as the start and the end of the millennium. It was, there's like, yes, Y2K, the cyber future, all that nonsense. Anyway, so yes, what is Virtuosity? Virtuosity is set in a world where there are these... Actually, do you know what? I'm going to start with this.
Yes.
I'm going to start with this. Because for anything else that might be said about this movie, because I went into this 90s cyberpunk movie that was going to be talking about computers and programs and AI and androids and all that stuff. And normally that is a recipe for hilarity, because 90s movies are really bad at talking about that stuff. But I'm going to say it, this one is actually kind of hitting the nail on the head in a lot of ways that surprise me. There's things in this that aren't exactly what we have, but there's something that is effectively a sex bot that is gathering data on the user. When they mentioned that, I'm like, yeah, that's literally something that happens now. You have like an AI sex bot who talks to men and gathers information on them. That's a thing.
There's aspects of this movie that we'll get to that are obviously like completely out of touch and just like make no sense in any time period. But it's strange that this one was kind of completely out of touch for a good 20 years straight, and then all of a sudden it started nailing it. Yeah,
there's a few things, and even just a couple of little things. Like at one point, the main program, who's the villain, Sid 6.7, he mentions that he's 50 terabytes, and that really stuck out to me, because I thought, you know what? That's not a ridiculous number. It's like still big enough that it sounds huge to us, but in 1995, like, most people didn't know what a terabyte was in 1995.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely... That's thrown out there in the same way that people nowadays talk about, like, yottabytes or whatever, or some magical made-up thing that just lets you know it's really, really big.
I don't even know what's after a terabyte. Petabyte, I think?
I think petabyte's next.
Yeah.
And then it's exabyte, if I remember correctly.
I'll take your word for it. All that joke reminded me, well, not joke, it's not a joke in the movie, it's just something that he says, but it reminded me of one of my favourite jokes from the final season of Community, where Keith David's in that season, right? And he plays a guy who's been like a hermit for like 30 years, so he's been like cooped up, he's been cut off from the outside world, but he used to be like a computer programmer or something like that. And there's a line where he's sitting with the other characters and he's like, oh man, there's so much to catch up on. Oh man, how are computers these days? Back when I was doing stuff, we were dealing with megabytes. What are we up to now? And someone just says terabytes, and he just gets really serious, almost stares at the camera and goes, "Those crazy bastards, they did it." Like I love that joke. I loved it so much. The way he treats the terabyte like curing cancer. So that's what this made me think of when he said terabytes.
Yeah, that's right. I got kind of the opposite, where it's made, not too long after this movie. There's a episode of Friends where my fiance watched it along with me, and he gets a new laptop and he's like, "Yep, this baby gets 12 megabytes of RAM," and I just sit there like, "Oh, you poor thing."
That sounds low even at that time, to be honest.
Yeah, but like he's saying it like it's the coolest, like it's top of the line, and I'm like, buddy, come on.
There's a few weird things that it actually kind of nails some things, if not exactly how they are, but at least in spirit gets a lot of things right about how certain technology is used now. Yeah,
there's one point where a character is talking about how Sid came to be, and they talk about neural networks and genetic algorithms and stuff like that.
Generative AI.
Yeah, it's literally exactly what we do, and they describe it accurately as well. Now, mind you, there's visuals going on along with it, and the visuals are stupid as hell, but like the script is accurately describing it.
Yeah, the idea that it's pulling from like these other, and the same way that people talk about generative AI, and part of why it's so bad, other than just the fact that it's crap and you should be paying artists to make things, right? Yes. But the idea that it's stealing from people because it's scanning real art and trying to use that to build what it's doing. That's how this personality's been created, by like scanning other real people to try and like build a personality. We'll get into spoilers who they're scanning because there's some details there, but I was oddly impressed how much I was finding myself going, oh, they kind of got this right. They kind of got that right. They kind of got this part right.
Which is incredible from an AI perspective, because all they had at that point was a Tamagotchi.
I know, it's actually kind of nuts. So credit, regardless of anything else I'm going to say in the movie, credit where credit is due on like I don't know if it's just the writer themselves, if they did good research or they had a good consultant who clearly was, but because that's the thing, it'd be one thing if they just got one little weird thing that turned out to be accurate, but there's like 3 or 4 things that felt eerily, they're kind of on the ball with this. So fair play. But yeah, it's about an AI program, Sid 6.7, played by Russell Crowe, who desires to be in the real world, and he's got a creator who's just crazy enough to actually give him an android body, and he is a psychopath. And Denzel Washington is a former cop who's actually serving time for murder, who is the only one who has a chance of taking him down. So almost a Demolition Man-X style, they sort of say, hey, we need to get him out of the slammer because he's the only one that can hunt him down. There's some context that makes it a little bit different, but that's what I was thinking of a little bit as I was watching it. So I'll just leave it there. Everything else can be spoilers, and we'll talk in the spoiler wall for that. But I guess I'll just, because I assume you hadn't seen this either.
No, I went into this 100% blind, to the point where I'm watching the opening credits and it says like 4th build Russell Crowe, and I'm like, oh, this is early in his career. Okay.
Actually, speaking of people that said early, did you happen to notice who was playing the daughter of the love interest?
Yes,
I say love interest. It wasn't a love interest technically, but you know what I mean, like the female lead.
Yeah.
I saw the name Kaylee Cuoco and I went, wait a minute.
Right.
Like in 1995, what age is she? And she's like 7 or something. Like
I'd say 7 to 10, somewhere in there.
Yeah, which actually makes her about my age, because I was 6 in 95. So
you want to try your odds with Kaylee Cuoco?
No, I was just merely commenting on it's weird how I'm noticing kid actors in the 90s are my age now.
Apparently, she was born in 85, tail end of 85.
Oh, she's older than me. So she's played a little younger maybe than she actually is here, but yeah fair enough. So Aye. Anyway, David,
Yes.
what did you think of Virtuosity?
Virtuosity is such a frustrating movie because it has, like we said, so many bits to it, like the AI stuff, and I'm going to say like the second half of the third act are really, really interesting. They do some really cool stuff, and I think there's other cool stuff that's littered throughout. But I think that this is a movie that drops you into the middle of things and doesn't give a damn about an explanation until far after it would have been prevalent. I think the first half an hour of this movie is so incredibly dense and so incredibly, I don't want to say like poorly done, because it, once you know what's happening, it's okay, but that explanation doesn't come until so much later. So yeah, it's, for me, this felt like it kind of had a Suicide Squad treatment. It felt like there was an initial thing that was filmed with a certain idea, but something happened in the editing bay. I don't know what, but it just feels like this was kind of hacked to pieces and they did what they could to make something out of it. It just felt like there was very disjointed pieces to it that didn't get any sort of major explanation until much later in the movie where it would have become necessary. So I like the concepts. I think character-wise, everyone's okay. At acting-wise, for sure. But I think that writing is where it's really fallen down for me, in that it just feels like it's not a complete story. It's just a bunch of stuff that shows up without explanation and then goes away just as quickly. Especially like locations and settings. They throw those in and out like candy. Like it is just absolutely like, oh, and now we're at this place. And now we're done. Goodbye. So in terms of whether I liked it, I'm going to say no. I think ultimately it's a bit too frustrating for me, but there are aspects to it that I can approve of.
That was a very interesting response to that question, because I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about for some of it.
Fair enough.
I don't know what was so confusing about the first half hour.
It just felt so cobbled together to me. I don't know. It felt like there was, like, whatever the main plot that we were getting to was, I saw them moving in that direction, but it felt like we were taking completely, like, out of step, like, way off the beaten path to get to something that should have been a pretty direct route here.
I don't know. I think the opening half an hour might be the best part of the movie, but
it's entertaining. It's definitely more entertaining than the second act, but it's so confusing to me.
I just didn't feel confused. I think my critiques come from, like, the very ending, and I do mean the very, very ending. I think there's some weird elements there, but what I will say is that I kind of love this movie. Now,
really, all right.
With flaws, they not in a sort of like unconditional, it's amazing, right?
Right.
It kind of veers between cool ideas, it veers into actually being kind of great in some ways, and then it veers into, oh, this is 90s schlock, and I love how bad this moment is, right? It kind of skids around all of those different levels, and I do think the ending lets it down a little bit, where I didn't come out of the end of it actually feeling as passionate and positive as I was at points during the movie. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest hindrance when I get to like scoring and whatnot. But like, I don't know how intentionally funny or what it was supposed to be, but Kurt Russell's villain, Russell Crowe, sorry.
Yep.
Freudian slip. Russell Crowe's villain in this movie, and his performance is so batshit, and he's such a, like, it's like the Joker mixed with, I don't even know, but there's definitely some Joker in there, but it's like mixed with the, like, it's like the Joker meets Homelander, which is a very scary thought in a lot of ways, but he's just a complete lunatic, but he loves being a lunatic, and he's enjoying it, and he's just happy to be a maniac. It's really something. His just little moments where he'll just, like for example, there's one moment where he's talking to Denzel Washington, and he's talking over like a police radio in a car, and he says a bunch of stuff to like antagonize him or whatever, and it's just this little thing he does where at the very end of the line of dialogue, as soon as he's done talking, without even pausing or taking a beat, he just starts swinging the radio on the cord in front of him like he's just having a great time, and I'm like, there's an energy to this that I just like, so I don't know, like, that stuff I thought was funny. I thought the sci-fi concepts were just a bunch of fun stuff they were playing with. And then it also had that grungy, like mid-90s, like this is what we think the future aesthetic is, where, you know, there's like a scene in a rave club where it's all like weird, like video camera effects and stuff like that. And there's, I don't know, it scratched a very particular itch. There's definitely parts of it that are rushed. There's character things that feel a bit off, and there's it's, you know, it's not a great movie. It isn't by any stretch, but it kind of falls into this weird place where there's enough good things, and then the things that aren't good, for the most part, were giving me, like, you know, I was getting some laughs out of them. I was enjoying the absurdity of it. So,
no, I agree
had
with
a good time.
I agree with the idea of Russell Crowe. Like, he is what makes this movie. If Russell Crowe did not do what he was doing, this movie would not succeed. Like, he is absolutely making this work in any possible way. I agree that I like kind of the aesthetic. I do think there are places where it falls down and it feels like it's just going a bit too cheap for me. But I think the slightly future aesthetic does work for the most part. My biggest issue in terms of what I just could not get into is basically all of Denzel Washington's plot. I think that he's a decent enough actor, but I think his character doesn't have enough going with him to make him really intriguing to me, or at least doesn't have like a big enough flaw to have me like invested in the changing of his character. And then by the time we get to about halfway through the second act, it just feels like there's nothing going on with him. He's just absolutely a sterile character essentially at that point, where it's just going to be, oh, I know exactly how this is playing out right up to the end. And it really didn't disappoint there. I figured it out, most of it. There's one small twist at the mid-end of the third act that I did appreciate. I think it was very well done. But ultimately, I couldn't get into Denzel Washington. And same thing with the female lead. I don't know her name offhand.
Madison.
Yes, Madison, played by Kelly Lynch. They're okay. It just felt like that entire side of things was so mad dash slapped together to me, where it didn't feel like I was really given a chance to get to know the characters before we were already on this adventure action quest. And then as we were in the middle of it, it didn't feel like they spent any time getting to know them either. Now, mind you, there are exceptions to that, especially with Washington's backstory, but it came just too late for me. It was far too late in the movie where I'd already just kind of given up on the character.
I mean, I kind of agree to an extent. I think you care about it too much, if that makes sense. But
I mean, that's the thing is, if I went into this movie knowing how absolutely insane Russell Crowe was going to be, I think I would approach it differently. I think I would approach it as that, like, almost like so bad it's good kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, but it's kind of it's that weird thing. It's kind of like that, asking that question: is Nicolas Cage good or bad? And then you kind of like corrupt as you try to answer. I feel like that's like, is Russell Crowe in this movie? Is he so bad he's amazing, or is he just being a genius? And I actually don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know. It's tough. As far as Denzel Washington's character goes, Parker Barnes is his name.
Yes.
He, like, yeah, I mean, I think his backstory's whatever. It's just a typical 90s generic backstory. Something happened to his family. He did bad things because of it, and it got him into this predicament. And, you know, like, that's his, like, feeling story for the rest of the movie. It's far more generic than everything else in the movie, absolutely. I don't, the one part I did disagree, I guess, is you said we didn't really get to know much of them before they started really getting off on the adventure, and I don't really know what else you wanted from them at that point. I think they set up enough like, you know, what their tension was, given where they were both coming from. Like, I don't think you need anything else there. Admittedly, I do think in the middle of the movie, whenever it slowed down to deal with those two, was when it was at its weaker points, for sure. For me, the excitement was, okay, what is Russell Crowe doing next? And to the movie's credit, I don't think it ever let it sag too long. Like, they kept him going to a new location, being a threat to new people, doing something crazier at a nice, steady pace that I never felt like I was lingering for too long. So, you know, don't get me wrong, I do have critiques. Like, I have critiques about, there's a couple of things they set up early on that I thought were going to be much bigger deals and ended up being like a really minor thing they paid off later that didn't even pay off in ways that I thought was
Yeah.
made sense or was, I was looking for simpler payoffs, and they gave me these weird complex ones that didn't quite work. But I don't know, like, there's a weird crazy energy to this movie that I really appreciated, and maybe it's partly because movies like this just don't get made anymore. And there's definitely 90s movies that are kind of similar to this that I hate. It's riding the lightning of just being bad in the right ways, but kind of good in the other ways, that I think it's worth watching. I certainly was very rarely ever bored.
Yeah, let me be clear. I absolutely recommend watching this because, again, the performance from Russell Crowe and all of the crazy like coincidences with modern stuff, I think it's worth watching for that alone. But in terms of whether or not I think this movie has actual like quality to it, I think it's more on the negative for me than it is on the positive. I think that enjoyability wise, absolutely, but like technically and whether or not it is a well-made movie, again, I think something happened in the editing bay that really just sets it into a strange zone for me where I can't say it has that.
Yeah, I'm just not that concerned about how good it is, though, I guess.
No, yeah, that's fine. I mean,
I just had fun. I don't know, like, this is just the sort of thing where I'm like, I'm just happy I got to enjoy this, because
all right. I mean, look, I come on this show to critique, and I'm going to do that.
Hey, I will. I absolutely, hell, no one's ever accused me of not being a jaded critical asshole most of the time, but
you heard a comment section. Go for it.
Yeah, sometimes something just scratches an itch, and I think there's enough here that if I saw this growing up, I'd have been into it. Like, this would have been something I'd been watching since youth, had I happened to catch it on TV one day back in, because this feels like the sort of movie that would have played on cable a bunch, but somehow I just never did. I never came across it. I never heard of it until it wasn't until I was looking up Denzel Washington movies a couple of years ago, and I was looking for, what have I not seen, just because I was going on honestly. There was a couple of like little things like that about a year before we started Collector's Cut that kind of inspired Collector's Cut. Whereas I kind of like, I did it with Denzel Washington, I did it with someone else, where I just sort of watched like 5 or 6 movies with the same actor that I hadn't seen before. And it was kind of the seed of, oh, this should be a show. This should like going through movies of like a director, actor, whoever. And that kind of ended up leading to Collector's Cut. So I, in a weird way, Denzel Washington, you can thank him for such a thing. But I never actually watched Virtuosity. For whatever reason, I watched something else instead. But this was better than most of the things I watched when I was doing that.
That's fair.
So, yes.
I will say, and this is not a slight against Denzel Washington, but the character felt like Denzel Washington. Like, he had a bit of a different vibe to him as the movie was starting, and I really liked that vibe. I really liked the idea they were running with. But by the time he gets clean shaven and out of lockup, he's just Denzel Washington. He's just the exact same guy that was in all other Denzel Washington movies.
Yeah. To be fair, if you look at it from the perspective of when this came out, that hadn't probably been established yet as much, because this is before most of his other movies. He'd been in some stuff before this, obviously, but I think the career of Denzel as a leading action man was definitely only starting around.
Oh yeah, no, obviously people would not know what that means to be, Denzel Washington as a character, but looking back on it now, some 30 years later, it's very obvious this is that exact same sort of very straight-laced yet charismatic energy to him.
He does often play the same type of role. I will say this though, he's always comforting in a role, like as opposed to some other actors who always play the same role who I just find annoying. I'm never mad at Denzel. I'm always like, you know what, when he looks serious and then lets that smile out, I'm like, you know what, he's going to take care of me, right? And I think if nothing else, whether it should be Denzel or someone else, it should be a straight man in the lead role in this movie, because it has to counteract Russell Crowe's crazy, zany, over-the-top villain.
If you had him going up against like Wesley Snipes or something, this entire movie would just explode from the intensity of it.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm feeling quite positive, and it's not because I think it's a great cinematic feat or it's like I think it's a hidden gem if you happen to like the type of movie that like a AA budget in the 90s would get you. Not a AAA budget, but a AA budget.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think there's also something to be said if you are a fan of just kind of, I don't want to say standard action movies, because it's standard action movies of the time. Like you said, Demolition Man, that sort of like vibe to it. I also got a bit of Running Man as well. It just in terms of this sort of the world that they're building up here is one that is a lot more entrenched in like violence in a lot of ways, but it's more subtle than Running Man is. So there is a little bit of that as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, interestingly, I looked up the director, and he actually directed The Lawnmower Man, which is also
that would work. Yeah.
a cyberpunk-esque movie with and that's got even earlier CG in it. This does have some CG in it. Now, some of it's in virtual reality, so it's fine, really, however it looks. That's the beauty of virtual reality. There's some stuff in the real world as well, but it's pretty limited to just like stuff that's meant to be futuristic nanobots doing stuff. So you never, there's never like a CG car or something really. Oh god, that looks so fake. The one thing that CG is kind of okay. It looks a bit fake, relative to everything else to a point.
There is one point where, well, there's multiple points throughout, but the one thing is Sid has the ability to regenerate, and that is in the real world, his regeneration abilities, and
that's what I'm talking about.
It doesn't blend in very well, I would say, but it works because it is just a quirky, different thing. So like it doesn't have a direct translation as to what that should look like.
No, obviously you'd expect it to be better if it was done today, but it kind of works and in a weird way adds to the movie's charm of being this 90s cyberpunk aesthetic that it's going for.
Yeah, and they do complement it with physical stuff as well. It's not like every single time they use special effects, it's all like digital stuff. Like they use some touch-ups and optical effects and stuff like that.
And I'd expect that in 1995 because we're kind of we're still very early days in CG at this point. We're just at that cusp of like lots of movies starting to use it around this time because obviously 91, 92, Terminator 2. Jurassic Park in 93, like some big movies had used big examples of it, but it was kind of the mid-90s where lots of medium budget movies are starting to dabble in CG, and we're getting some mixed results. Notably in 1995, that's when the Power Rangers movie came out, and if you've not watched that movie with the Zords in a long time, let me tell you, the CG has aged considerably.
Here's the thing, I haven't watched that in a long time, and I still thought the CG had aged prior to that, so... I'd love to go back nowadays. I watched
it just before the 2017 movie came out, and I was gobsmacked at the CG.
Mine was probably back in the 2000s, like somewhere in there.
We mentioned the main players in the cast. Denzel Washington's is a solid leading man. The character is a bit cliched and generic, but he's got a nice charismatic presence, if nothing else. Russell Crowe's the star of the show here. He's chewing the scenery. He's been over the top. Is it technically a hammy performance in some ways? Yeah, I think that's fair. But bizarrely, it's kind of what the character's supposed to be, so it's hard to fault it in that sense.
Yeah, it feels kind of, and this is with me never having seen it, but it feels kind of in the same vein as like a Max Headroom sort of character, where they're digital, so it's okay for them to be so over the top when they come like into the real world sort of aspect.
Kelly Lynch, who plays Madison, who's like a criminal psychologist. I didn't recognize her name from anything. Apparently I saw her in Roadhouse. She's in that. She's the main love interest in that, I think. But I didn't really know her from anything. There's a few other faces, though. There's like a sort of police captain played by William Forsythe, who is he's just one of those guys who you might recognize from movies in this time period. William Fichtner's in here. He's a character actor who likes to pop up in a lot of things.
God, he popped up, and I was like, he's just one of those faces where it's like, you've got probably a 30% chance of just picking a movie random, and he's in there somewhere.
I mean, this is the same year he had a small part in Heat, but he's also in The Dark Knight. He's all over the place.
That's what I'm saying. It's just, it's just like, man, our guy fell through, and we've only got 5 hours before the shoot. Call up William Fichtner.
Yep. Notably, there's a character in the first couple of scenes who he looks familiar. What's this guy from? Costas Mandylor. He's actually an actor who ended up being a major character in the Saw franchise, and that's why I recognize his face. So that stuck out. And also, Benny from The Mummy has got a small role in this as well.
Yeah. I almost didn't recognize him, and I don't know why. I think it was just like he had a full head of hair, and I'm not used to that.
Also, isn't Tracy Lords a porn star?
I mean, how do I answer that without outing myself? I mean, just looking at her credits here, IMDb does not list any credits that seem like adult titles, so I don't think so.
Maybe not. For some reason, I just saw the name Tracy Lords, and I was like, that's a porn star. But I guess it isn't.
You're thinking of Tracy Queens.
I don't know who that is, so...
I don't either. I'm just making up names.
I was going to say, somehow that turned into me not outing myself because I got it wrong, and you outing yourself because you're suggesting actual porn stars.
Not at all. I'm an innocent little boy, and I don't watch such things.
Yes. But fair enough. Yeah, that was all the faces that I recognize. But to be fair, there's a lot. Oh, actually, there's technically a couple more. There's a scene in like a MMA style, like sort of setting, right?
I was wondering if you would have seen this guy. Yeah.
And there's two faces there I recognized. One is the announcer, is Michael Buffer, who does all the boxing announcing stuff. And I only know who that is because like I've heard multiple stories about how WCW used to pay him $250,000 to show up and say his catchphrase at pay-per-views. And then,
which he does in this.
Yeah, so he got paid well for this. He's got Are You Ready to Rumble is something he has trademarked. Like he has that like locked down.
Look, I don't want to get into it, but it is people like him that make me think that trademark law is an absolute joke.
Yes. And then, because surely, like, you'd still get paid for you saying it. You don't have to trademark the phrase. Like, that's just, you're just being greedy.
Yeah, you show up as a performer. You don't need to show up as the owner of, like, 4 words.
Right. And then secondly, I also noticed in the background that one of the fighters was Ken Shamrock. If anyone is familiar with him from the late 90s, the wrestling era. So, yeah, just a couple of faces popped up and again, doesn't speak, basically an extra, although I'm sure he was cast because he was actually a mixed martial artist. But, it's
probably just easier to be like, yeah, everyone. They probably did a similar thing to, what was the movie we did somewhat recently? It was Rocky, the final Rocky movie, where there was already like a boxing match going on, and then the film crew just came in and said, hey, everyone in the crowds, if you just stick around, we're just gonna film some stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if they did that here just because, well, maybe some of the wide shots, but like there's a lot of stuff going on in the crowd in this scene. Yeah. So
I'm sure that the wide shots, I'm sure they just shot a normal crowd and then they're like, all right, everybody leave. This tiny amount will be where we shoot the close-ups.
All the extras there in those close-ups will all be actual actors who they've got for that. But all right. So I had a good time. I came out of this feeling very enthused for the most part. It does kind of let itself down a little bit at the very, very end, but warts and all, honestly, in some ways, because of its warts, I had a good time. So. This is one of these things where it was made at the right time with the right like goals and aims and just the right actor just enjoying himself is the best way I can put it.
No, I'll freely admit that I had a good time with all of the Russell Crowe scenes, and like I said, there's one bit towards the end that I got a kick out of. But I think for me overall, when I just sat down and really thought about the movie of how processing it. I felt like as much as I liked those moments from a sheer craft perspective, it just felt not fully there. It felt like there were pieces missing to me. I don't know specifically what I was looking for, but it just felt like it was a little bit like maybe an extra 5 minutes could have fixed all of my issues with this. It's very close, but there's so many pieces that I feel were in different parts than I would expect them to be. And then also just kind of running and gunning with characterization of, yeah, we'll figure it out later. We'll get to that. And it's just leaving me in this lurch in the meantime. But when it comes down to Russell Crowe's character, again, it is, spoilers, absolutely no question to me that he's the MVP of this movie. Like, 100%. So he is 100% the, I don't want to say driving force, because obviously, he is still like fourth build or whatever, but he is the most interesting character by far.
Do you know what I think part of the problem for you is that I went into this expecting 90s schlock. So all the things that aren't working for you, I was expecting to be bad.
I think I was going in expecting a Denzel Washington movie, and all the like modern connotations of some level of quality that associate with that, you know?
So I went in expecting schlock, and a lot of it is schlock, but then there was stuff that elevated above the schlock, so I came out of it feeling quite good. Whereas you, for some reason, went in expecting like a normal real movie.
Honestly, a name like Virtuosity, I wasn't even sure what to make of it. Like sometimes the title kind of gives it away of, oh, how is this going to be sold?
Telling me the guy who made Lawnmower Man made Virtuosity is not a surprise to me.
But I didn't know it was Lawnmower Man either. Like again, I try to go into these as blind as humanly possible, and sometimes that does me a disservice.
The point I'm making is, though, I think the title does tell you exactly what to expect. That title, Virtuosity, is 90s sci-fi schlock.
Knowing what I know now, absolutely it works. But my thing that I was thinking of was like virtuousness, like having virtues. Like I thought that was what the virtue in Virtuosity meant.
How many episodes you been on now? You're still just the rookie. You're still making these rookie mistakes.
Absolutely.
Virtues.
Where we going? We don't need morals.
All right, let's get to the spoilers, shall we?
All right.
Spoilers for Virtuosity. You have been warned. So the movie opens with one of a couple of misdirects the movie does throughout. Mainly the start and the end. It doesn't really try to hide it, right? So it's like we start off, we're in a world where I sound like a movie trailer guy now. In a world, right? So you get opening titles, and then Denzel Washington and this other guy, who's the guy from Saw 4 onwards, come out in these blue police uniforms, and they're very sort of futuristic looking. But notably, every other person in the world is walking about in grey suits, like grey business suits, both men and women, all wearing basically this matching set of clothes. And you see like these occasional ripples in the walls or something. So it's pretty much teasing you like, this isn't real. We're somewhere fake right now.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on there, but obviously you hear like conversations from people just like, is this your stop? Yes. Is this your stop? Yes.
So here's the thing. Earlier on when I was saying it oddly got certain things right, this is another thing I'm going to throw into that pile, is these people are NPCs. And this is 1995. So the idea of an NPC, while the term might have existed already because some video games would have had NPCs, the idea of them having audio looping dialogue and like the way that because I genuinely think I clocked that this was inside like a virtual world. One, because of the ripples, but two, it was because I noticed how the NPCs were acting, and they actually remind me of NPCs in relatively modern video games. So I'm going to throw this as another thing into the ring of, it oddly got something very right here.
I'll agree that it got something right. However, I do think that, you know, this low quality version of the NPCs, everyone's wearing matching clothing, and, like they're walking in pairs and they're bumping into each other. I think that like PlayStation 1 had already or was just about to come out at this point. So this may have been something that was a little bit more in the like public consciousness of like it was still kind of a thing back then.
Verging on, like the PS4 came out in Japan in December 94, didn't come out in the US until after this movie. And even then, like PS1 games like didn't have large crowds because they couldn't, right? It didn't exist yet. So it feels a little bit like it's just kind of like whatever breadcrumbs they had in 95 to predict where this sort of stuff was going, it oddly kind of got a lot of it like on it. Because even like the whole idea where Denzel Washington kind of figures out where their target is, which turns out to be Russell Crowe, and we'll get to that in a second, is because there's like a store, like a restaurant that has like a, you know, basically a smiley face, but like in text, you know, it's just a colon in the
emoticon.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's not actually in the emoticon form though. It's just the raw text of it.
You're talking about the emoji. The emoticon is still just colon smiley.
Oh, right. Okay. That what emoticon. I just used them interchangeably for the smiley, but fair enough. No, right.
Totally different.
Right. So it's written there, and like even later on when he's saying how he found like he's like, oh, it's a smiley face. Like the program wanted to like taunt us or have fun with it and put in a code. So
yeah, the programmers always leave Easter eggs.
So he says, oh, this is how people used to like sign off emails. And I went, okay, that sounds weird to hear, but if this is in the future and you're thinking back, I'm like, Yeah, like 1995, this must have been relatively early in people doing that, because not everyone was using the internet and computers in 1995 yet. I didn't touch one till about like 99, 2000.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that would be, you're not even get to Windows 98 at that point. You're still on, barely anything.
Well, the one before 98, do you remember what the Windows was before that?
I'm sure it was, I don't know if it was numbered as such, but it was 95, wasn't it?
It was 95, yeah. Windows 95.
Yeah, well, but even then, if this movie was released in 95, odds are it was filmed before that was even out.
Oh, sure. That again, let's be honest, they probably released Windows 95 and 94 because they love doing that. Because they're weirdos.
Yeah, just one earlier.
Yeah, I don't know, there was like weird things where I'm like, oh, the breadcrumbs of this are starting to form in the real world, but you're oddly kind of talking about it in a way that still feels modern. I don't know, I was impressed with some of those details. Anyway, they go looking, and they're looking for their target. We don't know who it is or why or whatever. And Russell Crowe gets this big introduction where he silhouettes behind the sort of the wall in the Asian restaurant.
It's a Japanese like rice paper wall.
So yeah, and there's a whole thing here where Russell Crowe immediately starts overacting and starts like firing shots off, and they have this whole standoff, and it's all, and I'm like, whoa, we're like, what's the context of this? Like, why is he the bad guy? What's going to... But I don't think this is a problem, because I think this is very intentional, because they reveal that they're in virtual reality, and when we cut to the real world, and Denzel Washington and the other guy are in these like big VR chairs with headsets on, and they explain it quite clearly in the dialogue after, where William Fichtner's talking to the other woman or whatever. It's like, hey, this is us training this program so that we can use it to train law enforcement. And we discover, of course, that they're using 2 prisoners who have volunteered to test it. So they're, and it just so happens that Denzel Washington's character is actually an ex-cop. But,
yes,
they're using prisoners to test this and see if it's working and if it's functional. And, there's a couple of interesting things that come out of all this. I mean, one is the idea that, the detective, captain guy who, knows Denzel Washington is like, hey, why did you shoot that civilian to get to the bad guy? And Denzel's like, because they're not real. it's part of a computer program. And
he's like, you're supposed to pretend they're real. And he's like, oh, okay. Or if I do that, I get shot. So...
Yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing is that, well, 2 things actually here. One is that Russell Crowe's character said he uses a power he's not supposed to have, right? Because he uses electric power or something like that.
He apparently they have the methods of killing that they could expect from this guy, which was a whole bunch of normal stuff. But he used down power wire or something to kill this guy.
He's got a weapon wheel effectively of ways he can kill someone, and he used something that wasn't on the list. So Denzel's like, hey, he cheated. And then the other thing is that he apparently and they don't know that Sid did this necessarily at first, but it's like the sensors were turned up, so it actually hurt them in real life more than it should have, and it actually killed the other guy. The other guy dies in this scene because of the injuries they get.
See, that's again one of those things that I don't feel like was properly explained. It's kind of just hand waved away as, here's the tension of you die in the game, you die for real, because they say, oh, these sensors are turned up. One of the guys dies because his brain is fried, I guess, essentially. Yes. But then Denzel Washington comes out of it totally chill, totally cool. And not to get too far ahead, we come back to this aspect later on, and Denzel gets a much worse time, and he's still fine. It didn't feel like there was any real explanation of what is the actual line here of how much can the human body take to keep it as a threat.
I don't know. This doesn't need an explanation. I think you're thinking about this too much.
I guess.
No, because the whole point of the opening scene is to show you that Sid actively wants to hurt real people, right? That's the point, is that he wants to actually hurt them, he wants to kill them, and he has turned up these sensors. So in this opening scene, he does much worse things to the other partner. Denzel just gets shot in the shoulder or whatever it is. And so he's in pain when he wakes up out of the VR machine. He's kind of his body's gyrating, and he's kind of, he's feeling it, but it doesn't do anything permanent. He's fine. By default, it's not supposed to hurt them when they're in here. That's why later on when we come back to the VR, because, worse things happen, but it's because they've not janked up all the settings to do it. It only hurts this guy in the opening scene because Sid's specifically done it. I don't think this was poorly explained. I think this made sense to me.
Well, no, I'm not saying, because, yes, he does get more hurt, but it doesn't affect him. I'm saying that specifically that setting, specifically it's done with a visual of a brain scan and MRI that gets all spiky with CGI. They show the spikiness getting to ridiculously high proportions, and then they just pull him out and he's fine. That's the part that I'm having trouble with, because that one was far worse than this one ever was, and yet he's just like, yeah, whatever, average Tuesday.
Wait, whose spiky brain were we watching? Denzel's
In the final act, in the last bit. Like they have a little percentage meter in the last act,
sure.
and it gets up to like 800%, which this one I think it only got up to like 150 or something, and he's still fine. He's just like able to walk it off.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't receiving killing blows though. When I think the idea is that when the sensors are up high, if something happens to them in the system,
oh, okay,
right.
Well, I mean, if you read it that way, yeah, I guess I thought it was just the spikiness itself was what was killing them.
No. I think it's like the idea is that because the sensors are up, because like the brain's going to like feel the impact of whatever happens. Like,
okay.
So yeah, that never really bothered me. Maybe that we can get to that at the end, because that's like the final
that's
part of the movie. So this other guy dies. Denzel Washington's fine, and we get kind of sort of, so it does that thing where it drops you in. We're kind of confused about what this virtual reality world is, who Russell Crowe is, but it turns out no, he's just a program that's meant to be a villain to help train law enforcement potentially. And we get introduced to the character who designed him, Lyndon Meyer, who is very proud of his program, thinks he's the best.
Credit to this actor. Like, I know there's character actors out there who like take specific roles, but I have to imagine this guy is always cast as the Weasley guy.
The Weasley scientist who's too proud of his creation.
Yeah.
Or programmer in this case.
And this is Steven Spinella.
Yeah. So because the first time it intercuts, of course, around a little bit, but just to stick with this side of it for now. Because when we see him talking to his program, and Russell Crowe's like, he's in that green suit, right? Like a fancy suit you'd wear to a club or something. And he's on this big screen where they can watch the VR world, and Russell Crowe's just talking to him. And
while doing like crazy stuff, like he spawns a rose in, sniffs it, just throws it away. Like he's going nuts with it. And
at one point he actually does like a giant like backflip and says, "I'm 50 terabytes of something dive," some fancy. He's like saying, "Hey, I deserve more than this. I like, hey, out there in the real world, like your God gives and takes, but in here, my God doesn't have the balls." And he's basically talking to his creator. He's talking to the programmer.
Yeah,
but it does kind of sound like Lyndon Meyer is kind of, well, a little bitch and wants to like worship his creation and give him whatever he wants.
Yeah, it's this weird. It almost feels like he's scared of Sid, while at the same time he kind of just wants to bring Sid in as a form of like, I created you, I am your God, like a kind of an ego boost at the same time. It's a strange line to walk.
Yeah. Well, Joe is so funny because I went into this movie so cold and blind. I didn't really know where it was going in terms of its raw premise. I knew there was like a bad AI because the poster says Sid 6.7 is like the deadliest killer or something like that.
Right.
But at this point, I didn't know there were going to be like a physical thing that he could take. I was thinking, oh, it's going to be like he like ends up like spreading through the internet or something, and Denzel Washington has to jack in to go and after him.
Denzel, I thought for sure, especially once I figured out virtuosity meant virtual reality, like I thought for sure this was all going to be like a pre-Matrix ripoff. I thought this was all going to be a like, oh, we're going to go into this virtual world and we're going to have to fight against this guy because otherwise he's going to drop nukes or whatever.
I mean, like, I'm as cynical as the next guy. I don't think you can have a pre-rip-off as much as I get what you meant.
I'm not saying rip-off. I'm just saying it's the proto-Matrix. It's the, we're going in. I mean, I'm sure there was also virtual reality movies prior to this as well.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I kind of like where it goes, though, with him, like, getting a physical android body. Just because I was like, okay, that's interesting, because now he's like a threat in the real world, and it makes it a bit more high stakes. I was glad, and obviously it's kind of a cool reveal later on when they go back to the virtual reality world, but I was glad they went back there at the end, because I'm like, it would have felt weird if they never returned to that, given that it started the whole movie off and felt like a big deal. So I was pleased that they returned to it at a certain point, but yeah, having it be a physical threat in the real world, and effectively he's like, hey, I want to try life out there, because basically because of what happened to the other convict who died in this training exercise, the authorities or the attorney general or whoever are like, hey, delete that program, like shut him down, like he's clearly defunct or he's doing bad things,
corrupted,
take him offline. And says like, hey, no, let's not do that. How about you let me out into your world instead? So this is where Benny from The Mummy, what's his name? Kevin J. O'Connor. He is like, he's basically the android guy. He builds that kind of side of things. But he's in the VR base because and this is the part with the sex bot where he's talking to this hot blonde who's like, come in with me here, be with me, whatever his name is, Clyde. Come in, Clyde. I want you in here with me, Clyde.
I like immediately. I was like, oh my god, they predicted those pop-up ads.
Yep, that's what exactly what it is.
Exactly what it is. They did it exactly the same, except it's with the beneficial of it's able to call you by name. It's able to say your name in the middle of it.
Hey, some of those bot ads will say, hey, singles in your area, and they'll actually like mention your town.
Yeah. But that's old school stuff. That's just using your IP address and I know, getting it in the general area.
But I'm saying, with the Google ads, like collecting your data so they can advertise things they know you've been looking at and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. How far away are we of ads just saying, hey, Peter?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want a babe?
Anytime that you're logged in on an account where you use your name, like if you log into like Amazon, or they do that. They're on, like, Amazon posts the ads that say like, hey, would you like to buy this? And they use your name in the ad. Yeah,
but at least like that's inside the system of the shop itself. But I'm saying, how far away are we from the sex bots in the corner popping up saying, hey, it's your name? I
remember a story once. I don't know how accurate it actually was, but there was a guy who took out a Facebook ad campaign, but he made like the categories of who he wanted to aim it towards so absolutely minuscule that it literally did only target one person, a friend of his, and he just made the whole ad campaign like gaslighting this guy.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that's a way you could do it.
I just like this felt like it was nailing these things, and then eventually our guy Lyndon Myers walks up behind him and interrupts, and is like, hey, you realize this is just recording all of your like if you hook in and have sex with her in the VR world, which is clearly a choice that they've got here, he's like, it's just going to record every single reaction your body has. It's going to map all your data. It's going to record everything that gets a reaction out of you. It'll record so it can be used for further seduction techniques in the future.
It's the algorithm.
The algorithm, yes. And he doesn't really care. He's like, just let me use your tech for a minute. Go on, let me go in there and
in the far off year where people have to choose between privacy and sexual gratification, they pick sexual gratification.
Yes, 99 times out of 100, they'll pick sexual gratification. Mm-hmm. But it's actually quite smart here because it's used as a way, because he's like, hey, you build the androids, why don't we try and take one of the programs and put in, and immediately Kevin J. O'Connor's like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do that. And then immediately,
he's absolutely against it.
Yeah, Linda Meyer goes, why don't we start with Sheila there? And he's like, that's a great idea. Let's do it right away.
I'm pretty sure he uses some line along the lines of like, you're the mind of a generation.
Yeah, he's like, that's a great idea. Let's give her physical form. Yeah. Absolutely genius. But of course, what he actually does is he takes the data core of Sid and puts it in Sheila's little case, so that Kevin J. O'Connor thinks he's going to make a hot babe, and instead we get Russell Crowe, which for some reason comes out of a cocoon-looking thing. I mean, it's a cool visual, but it's a really weird choice. But I love it because it is weird.
It's just one of those things where obviously he had to be born, but it had to be born in a way where, if they 3D printed him, you'd be able to tell pretty early on, wait a minute, that's not a hot babe. So they need to keep it hidden the whole time as he grows, and egg just makes sense.
Yeah, but we get a really important rule here before they build the body, which is he pulls out a fake snake, right? An android snake that he's made. And they're all real. Yeah, and they're all silicon based, right? So he's like, hey, watch this, and he cuts off the snake's tail, but then he holds the snake's wound next to a beaker, right? And it basically takes the glass, it takes a chunk of the glass and uses that matter and converts it to rebuild itself. So we get a really clear rule here for the villain going forward, which is that if he gets something cut off, if he gets shot, wounded, whatever, as long as he can touch glass, not grass, as long as he can touch some glass.
That's a strange. They got that as right as well. Go out and touch glass.
As long as he can touch glass, he can heal. The only way to permanently kill him would be to get his data core out or kill it or destroy that.
Yeah, and the data core is just this little, like, also glass-looking cube that's kept somewhere in the body. It seems to always be the head, though.
Honestly, this is like maybe the most dated thing about the tech is this idea that the data is on like a crystal-looking thing because it's not like a it's not an SD card or something.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've heard a bunch of stuff about storing data in like crystals and like diamond and stuff, and it's apparently very high-density storage. So, in the far distant future,
maybe
it
we'll
may
get
be.
there.
But as it stands right now, it's more silicon. Just keep using silicon.
Yes. So and as soon as he wakes up, it's like the first thing he does is grab Kevin J. O'Connor by the neck and kills him just to feel a man die in his hands.
I mean, better Benny than anyone else, I guess.
Think of his children.
Still.
Come on, Dave. The line for the Mummy is "Think of my children," and then Brendan Fraser goes, "You don't have any children.
Oh, that's
I was
right.
setting you up. Damn it."
I'm sorry. It has been over a decade since I watched The Mummy.
It's like the most memorable thing about that character from that movie to me is that line about them not having children.
The most memorable thing to me is how he dies, because that gave me nightmares for years, man.
I was already watching horror movies by that point. It was child's play.
I was a scared little baby.
So
and mind you, this was just like 3 years ago.
So Lindenmeyer just kind of runs away as this is all going on because he's scared. And Russell Crowe's like, "Whoa, gravity," and he's like sort of like finding his footing and whatnot.
Yeah, can I just ask about the Lindenmeyer plot here?
Sure,
like,
you may.
He runs away because he's afraid. We find out later he's hiding out in a motel, just kind of watching the news as Russell Crowe goes on his spree. And then randomly towards the end of the movie, he shows back up again. This felt like it was missing something somewhere along the way.
No, I
Either
agree.
the part that says why he was hiding out in a motel or the part where he came back. I needed something there.
Well, I kind of got both of those to a point. Like, he was hiding because he was kind of responsible for this. So he was hiding both from Sid because he's dangerous, but also the authorities because he's guilty of all this. So the hiding I got, it did feel like it was missing kind of his turn to obsession of like, I'm going to worship Sid like a god and want to go help him. Like, yeah, there could have been more there. There is one thing in his little like sort of subplot of him just watching the news that I did like though. At one point he's watching Star Trek, and I like this for two reasons. One, it cut to the scene and it's just like a close up of the TV and like Kirk's like overacting, Shatner's overacting, and I realized that Sid's hair is William Shatner's hair from Star Trek the original series, and I'm like, oh shit, they put this in as that's why he has that hair, because Lyndon Meyer's a Star Trek fan. I thought that was a neat little thing, right? That's not an accident. I think that's intentional.
I could see it going either way, but I get your point.
Yeah.
I get your point.
But especially since it cuts to a scene of him overacting. I think they played the idea that Sid's supposed to be psychotic Shatner. Like, I think that was the direction they had at one point.
At least from a visual standpoint. Yeah, I could see it.
So they've got that going. But the other thing is the trick they play on at the end, which we'll get to, is actually something that happened in Star Trek The Next Generation in a very specific plot, which would have finished by the time this movie was made. And even if it hadn't quite finished when they were writing this, it was like a middle of this show episode. So
yeah, it would have been done.
Totally could have been inspiration for something. So I think there's some Star Trek influence in here.
Yeah, I mean, sci-fi influences sci-fi. I'm not going to say it's not possible. I just didn't pick up on that. Like, it's not a very strong relationship.
Yeah, but they showed me Star Trek at one point, so I mean, they got me thinking about Star Trek, so they clearly were thinking about it.
I mean, who owns Star Trek? Is it Paramount?
It's Paramount, yes.
So, I mean, that makes sense. They would pull from their own library, at least.
Yeah, but like they've got other things they could pull from if they wanted to.
They could play Night of the Living Dead.
There's public domain access movies they could happily put in there if they wanted to. But and I bet as well that episode might even have like the episode they showed, which I didn't recognize off the top of my head. But I bet
trivia says that it was the Mirror World episode, or one of the Mirror World episodes.
Okay, probably the first one because it's the original series. I'm just wondering if there's anything in that episode that thematically would relate to this episode, and that's why they specifically picked that one.
Actually, I may have been wrong. I was vaguely remembering. It says The Enemy Within, an episode about Captain Kirk being split into good and evil sides by the transporter.
That's right, and yeah, the evil side is a lot. It was kind of Sid-like. Right. I'm thinking about it. There's definitely some parallels here. There you go. It all comes back to Star Trek.
Everything. It's all sci-fi is either Star Trek or Dune.
Yes, or Frankenstein, because that was the first sci-fi story ever written.
Yeah, but that's more monsters. I'm talking about space stuff.
Sure. Well, the first space stuff would have been, I don't know, like
Trip to the Moon.
well, a bigger. I was thinking maybe like Flash Gordon or these like sci-fi serials from the, I don't know, whatever year. Anyway, so right. I mean, that basically covers all his stuff, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, from that point on, he just goes off on a tear, and we get to see multiple different locations he goes to. But
no, I meant Lindenmeyer. Oh,
Lindenmeyer? Yeah. I mean, even when you're talking about Russell Crowe, at that point, you kind of need to talk about what's going on with Denzel Washington.
Sure, but there's a lot more to talk about with him. He's got a lot of notable scenes.
Yes, absolutely. But at this point, it is just, okay, let's go out and see the world. And he's basically a slightly more human version of The Mask in terms of chaos caused, but like just as cartoonish.
Oh god, there's a point in this movie where someone's like Denzel or someone says, "Oh, like, you know, what would he do now that he has all this freedom?" And it cuts to Russell Crowe walking to "Staying Alive" by the Bee Gees, and I cackled with laughter at this low angle shot looking up at him. And he's wearing these like little round sunglasses and a purple suit, and I'm like, this is Kino. This is absolute Kino. I am loving this. Anyway, so to go back and explain Denzel's side of things, so he's, we find out he used to be a cop. He's taken to the prison, and we find out that he's got a metal arm, right? He's got a synthetic limb, which doesn't, it's hidden. He's got flesh over it, but we see the scar, and the scanner at the prison says, "Hey, metal limb detected," whatever.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there for the whole movie thinking, "Oh, all right, it's going to be a big deal. Let's see how he uses it." And then scene after scene passes by with no use at all until finally we get to one tiny, barely worth it use at all.
Save it for later, but. Yeah, I thought, okay, the metal arm is going to play a big part. It doesn't, right?
I was thinking at this point thematically, because I don't think it's by the time we get the metal arm, but later on we get the idea that Sid's going to be put in an android body. I thought that was going to be like a thematic link of you got a guy in a metal body, and then you got the human with the metal arm, and it's like they both have a little bit of each other, like they can relate in this strange way, but of course they're totally opposite sides, and that would just be the thematic link. Doesn't come up. Not at all.
Well, it can, because he's not metal, Sid. He's silicon.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I was talking more of like more of an android aspect to it, not human. Let's go with that instead of metal.
Sure. But yeah, and we see that like when he gets into the prison, he's meant to go to solitary because he's a cop in prison, so that's where he stays. But they open the door to the gen pop, and there's like a prisoner there waiting for him who throws up a "Hail Hitler" like immediately.
And then it cut to a white power tattoo. Yeah. It's like, yeah, guys, we get it. He's a Nazi.
Right. And it's like, okay. Sadly, this also still feels very relevant. But so of all the things it gets right, there's a few things that it gets right in a bad way.
Look, even if we're not talking about the modern world, there's always been Nazis in prisons. You're never not going to have Nazis in prisons.
That's true. That's true. So basically, the guy tries to kill Denzel with a blade. Denzel fights back and wins.
It's
fairly
just
handily.
To be clear, it's because they blame him for that other guy who was in the VR program dying. They say that he got led to his death because of Denzel.
Yeah, but I also think they also all hate him because he's a cop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the reason they're willing to do this.
There is some interesting visual things going on here. I did kind of like that all the prisoners who, I mean, for one, the cells are kind of different to a regular prison because it's meant to be futuristic. So they've all got like they're almost like metal shutters with just little windows on them as opposed to bars, and they're all throwing out throughout the entire scene like ripped up bits of magazines and stuff like that. So there's just this sort of like almost confetti like coming down from all the prison cells that are all stacked up.
It's a real striking visual because it's almost like those Japanese paper walls we were talking about before. It's a backlit, opaque, like semi-opaque wall where you can just see their shadows move, but you don't get to actually see any of the prisoners directly.
So yeah, it's an interesting visual, for sure, for this one scene.
I also want to throw out real quick, at this point, Denzel's got like, not dreads, but he's got like longer hair and a beard and all that, and I love this look for him. I don't know why he hasn't gone back to this.
I've never seen him with it, so I suspect he just doesn't like it. But
That's fair. I mean, if he doesn't like it, so be it. But he looks great.
but yeah, obviously he gets blamed for trying to kill a prisoner here, pretty much. But our female lead, Madison, comes to see him, gets an interview, and says, "Hey, can I like talk to you? I want to like do a profile, blah blah blah. Let's talk about what happened." And he is like, "Hey, can I take notes?" And he's like jotting things down, and he's explaining how he figured things out and whatnot. And he's like, "Wait, why are you interested?" And she's like, "Well, I'm writing a book on killers and stuff." So, and it's like, okay, so we're getting a sense now. At this point, all we've had of his backstory is, okay, he went off kilter and killed a bad guy. We don't know. There's other details to it we don't get until we get the flashback later. But at this point, it just kind of sounds like some bad guy killed his family and he went scorched earth and like got revenge. That's what it sounds like at this point in the movie.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they add in a couple little tiny details of, I think they say at one point that is definitively how he got the arm as well. But yeah, it's just, we don't get a lot here. And I'm okay with it at this point. We're only like 20 minutes into the plot. Most of it was spent on that virtual reality stuff. I'm okay with not knowing a lot of what happened here at this point. I just think they take too long to get around to it. I think it takes a bit too long for me of showing what actually happened past the point where it really would have mattered.
I kind of get why they waited till they did, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Not that I'm saying it works necessarily either. I have thoughts. So,
okay.
It sets this up, and it's like, so, but as this is happening, all the Russell Crowe stuff's happening as well, where he's getting made into a body and whatnot, and he kills the guy and leaves the building, and he's on the loose. And, cut to our detective captain and like the head of the company, William Fichtner's there, the attorney general's there, and it's basically just like, hey, we did that training program with tons of people, and only one man found him. Only one man got to him and understands him. We need the best cop I've ever worked with out in the streets. We need Denzel Washington. So,
I mean, you literally described the scene almost verbatim. Like, it is exactly that. And they're of course willing to offer, like, here's a full pardon, you get to go free, no big deal. But we are going to put a tracker in your head, so that way you can't just run away.
Yes. And I thought maybe, they'll say, we'll take it out once you've caught him. Because basically the big condition here is if you catch him, then you get your pardon. But no, it sounds like, no, you're always going to be tagged for life. Like, you're just going to have this in you forever.
This was a little bit confusing to me, because they later on in the movie, someone does say, like, hey, they do all this to all the felons who get out. Like, this is just the normal operating procedure now. They all have these tracers in them. But he got handed a full pardon. He wouldn't be a felon after that. Like, a pardon means you didn't do the thing.
Look, this is why it's hypocritical. This is why it's the corrupt government and their people.
Fair enough. Shame on me for thinking that William Fichtner might eventually be on the side of the goods.
He's a good guy in some stuff.
Is he? Everything I've ever seen him in has just been like he's the asshole.
Definitely in one or two TV shows, he's like sort of started off as kind of shades of grey and ended up being a good guy by the end. Okay. That's definitely a thing that's happened.
Fair enough. I don't think I remember him from any TV shows, so that's just not what I've seen him in.
I want to say Prison Break was one. Maybe something else. I don't know. He's been in a few things. Right. So, yeah, obviously it's not much of a choice, but all right, fine. Like, and honestly, I kind of like zoned out as she was making the request, but the criminal psychologist Kelly says, hey, I'll partner up with them. I'll go with them. And I kind of like didn't hear her explanation as to why, but she convinces them because she goes with them.
There's literally no explanation why. I'll tell you exactly what she does. She blackmails them. She's literally just sits there and says, well, I'm a journalist and I could go out and let the world know that you guys let this dangerous serial killer out of your virtual reality program. And they're like, well, all right, fine, you're in.
Fair enough. That sounds fine to me.
Yeah. So... I just don't understand why. Like, I understand she's writing her book and all that, but it seems, you mentioned earlier on and then corrected yourself, it seems like she was supposed to be some level of a romantic interest. Like, she's more interested in being with Denzel Washington than anything to do with the Sid stuff.
Yeah, I think she's fascinated by him. She probably deep down thinks he's innocent or something. And we also find out she's got a daughter played by Kaylee Cuoco, who, even though I knew it was her, I was looking at her face and I'm like, there was like one time where she smiled where I'm like, okay, I can kind of see it. But for the most part,
I don't know how horrible this is going to sound, but I couldn't see it at all until the visual of her being bound up in the visual. And I was like, oh yeah, there she is. I get her now.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. Yeah, you sound like
I know.
a monster.
I don't know why that all of a sudden clicked it, but I was like, nah, I see it now. Maybe just because it like aged her up slightly. Like she didn't look as like innocent of a kid anymore.
When she was bound and been held hostage, she all of a sudden she looked like
she got
matured.
like more roughed up. Her hair was more messy. She wasn't as straight laced. I don't know. I don't know why it all of a sudden clicked. That's when it did, though.
I'll tell you what else is clicking. Someone on the watch list is clicking your name into it right now.
Look, I don't ever intend on meeting Kaylee Cuoco, but if the opportunity arises, I'll steer clear.
Yes, I think it's probably wise. And if I'm there, I will play that clip just to just to really make everything.
Hold on, let me give you a better audio to it. Just like I can really picture Kaylee Cuoco being tied up and bound. There you go. Just play that clip.
Anyway, so
are you gonna start doing shorts again, like right now?
Just that bit.
Yeah.
Have you seen this man, pervert at large?
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, we meet the kid. He just sort of stays out in the car though, whilst she goes in and deals with stuff. But Kelly Coco comes out and starts talking to Denzel and starts asking him just questions like a kid would about various things. Including, do you think my mum is pretty? To which Denzel says, yes, I think she's very pretty, which felt like it was setting up the continued, like, maybe this will be a love interest thing. But for whatever reason, I mean, I would suspect that they might have, like, had something and cut it out, would be my guess.
All right, so I'm going to bring forward this trivia bit. This is the number one trivia on IMDb. According to Kelly Lynch, there was supposed to be a kiss between herself and Denzel Washington. However, Denzel Washington had the scene dropped because he felt an interracial love scene would hurt the film's box office chances.
Oh.
Again, nothing to back that up except for Kelly Lynch's word, but that's where it apparently went.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously, it's sad that he ever had that thought, but if it's indeed true. But it's the 90s. I don't know. Like, you know, people were still thinking that way at the time. I think people don't anymore, but...
How long? But I'm blanking on the name. But the one police brutality case, Rodney something, I think.
Rodney King?
Yeah, that's it.
Murder is a better word for it, but go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, when did that happen relative
that was
to
like,
all of this?
But 90-ish, because I know that because it happened across the street from when they were filming Terminator 2, the bar scene stuff.
Fair enough. So, yeah, I mean, that's obviously... I'm not saying all race relations are in relevance to that, but that is something where it's a good little goalpost to say where we were at as a society.
Okay, well, you know, I mean, like, whatever. There's some of the tensions there, regardless, and he hears over the police radio, because that's what he was listening to, that sets up to something, so they go off to deal with that, so...
Yeah, we did actually skip one that came before this. The first thing he does is he goes to a house with some rich people in it. And
I'd forgotten about this because you don't even see this one happen. This just like after the fact, we get a crime scene where this house of people have been killed, and like on the walls he's written in their blood, you know, like the pigs must pay or something to that effect.
Yeah, like the pigs must die, which apparently was a callback to, I think it was the
Manson. Was it? No.
Manson, yeah.
So, and this is actually what sets up a little exposition scene where she explains when they go to Lyndon Meyer's house and look at his computer to see how they built Sid, where she explains that, when he was developing Sid back when he was like version 2.1 and whatever, he started putting in like the profiles of serial killers into Sid to train him.
And also, like, Adolf Hitler was definitely in there too, so it's also just evil people.
Yeah, there was Manson, there was Bundy, there was like, and I was like, oh man, there's something kind of wild that I love about this premise. That, I mean, one, yes, it kind of oddly works with the idea of modern like AI, like taking from art all over the internet and like making some sort of gobbledygook based on all of it. But the idea that your virtual, like your AI killer is someone who's literally been molded out of all of the worst people that have ever existed, and that's why he's such a lunatic, because he's got all these different like crazy ideas in his head, from Manson, Bundy, to whoever, like everyone. I actually kind of love that. Admittedly, like you said earlier, the visuals of the computer screen as they're talking about this, as the faces are molding together, are just nonsense. It's just
they've got a bunch of floating heads of all these different like killers and evil people through history, beaming lasers out of their eyes and mouth towards another head, and that head slowly evolves to look like Russell Crowe, which, if you didn't know he was an actor, would seem really bad for Russell Crowe.
Do you know, there's a weird little detail in this scene where they find a computer and Denzel says, "Oh, I couldn't find a keyboard," and she goes, "Oh, it's voice controlled," and she just sits down and starts asking for things. And I thought, okay, either this is to show that he's been in prison for a little while and this is like something that's developed when he's been away, or it's just showing that he's not that tech savvy, but nothing else in the movie makes me think he's not tech savvy, so it feels like it's just a time thing.
I got the vibe that this was like more advanced. The fact that he's a programmer, this is more advanced of his personal setup.
Oh,
because
Lyndon Meyer. Okay, I get you. Okay.
Yeah, we do see other computers in the movie using keyboards. It's not like they've all been phased out and turned into a voice control. So I think it's just a thing where he may not be super tech savvy, but it's only in the fact of this guy has way further advanced technology.
That makes enough sense. So that's some stuff that's in there, I think, before he meets the daughter and stuff.
Well, the one big reveal in this scene is as they're going through the list of all the bad guys that make up Sid, he pauses on one, and the name is Matthew Grimes, and he immediately is taken aback, saying, "Matthew Grimes is inside Sid? Oh God, oh no." And he's super pissed off about this because personal connection.
Yeah, it's the guy that murdered his family and he ended up killing. And, you know, obviously the movie kind of like does have him wrestle with the idea. It's not really the guy that killed his family who's in there. It's just been used to train him. But the idea that some of the lines or sensibilities start sort of like, you know, coming out from the villain. Just to like...
we find out much later in the movie that apparently Matthew Grimes, because Denzel Washington was investigating him or whatever, actually was kind of obsessed with him
and started targeting him, and
started targeting him. And some of that has carried over into Sid. There is this level of obsession that Sid shows specifically towards Parker because he has Matthew Grimes.
Well, it's not just that, though. It's kind of like a 50-50 thing, because I think it's also... Take it less so much that he remembers like who this is, and more that because he has the same personality traits, because he's based on this killer, because Denzel Washington has that first encounter with him, and he's the one that kind of got away. Like he kind of becomes, it's almost like a Joker Batman thing where he basically becomes obsessed with the good guys chasing after him because he can keep testing him and messing with them and doing stuff. And, you know, I mean, Denzel Washington even says that at one point, that, you know, he wants to play with these, because Russell Crowe is obsessed with having an audience. Sid wants to have an audience for all his bad stuff that he does, and his favorite audience member is Denzel Washington. So that's the idea of all that stuff. So the first big thing that he does, though, that we get to see, is that he goes to a nightclub, right? And it's this ultra 90s nightclub where people are filming with cameras, and like there's like heat map versions like playing on the screens around the nightclub.
But it's like a rotating gradient where like what was red fades into orange, then yellow. So it's just this super trippy looking thing, but it's exactly the time. It is exactly 1995.
Exactly. And he walks in and he like notices he's being filmed, and this actress holding the video camera is an actress who I instantly recognized, and I looked up, what do I know her from? And she's been in like 8 movies I've seen, and I couldn't tell you what her character is in any of the movies, but she's been in tons of things from this time period.
Who was it?
The actress is... Oh, she's not even on the... I'd have to... Let me... Give me a second.
All right, no problem.
Because
she wasn't familiar to me at all.
Yeah, I mean, she isn't even on the line of dialogue, really, I don't think. Oh, God.
I'm looking as well. Woman with camera? Is that what she probably would be?
Probably, yeah. That sounds right. It's an Asian woman.
I got cameraman.
Okay,
woman
definitely.
With video camera. There we go. Una Damon?
Oh, there you go. I definitely found it earlier because I clicked on her name and I was like, what do I know her from? She's in Deep Rising, she's in The Truman Show, she's in Gattaca, she's in Deep Impact. Like, she's been in tons of things I've seen.
But, like, yeah, I'm seeing this, but she's, like, credited as Chloe in The Truman Show. I don't remember Chloe at all. but it is a named character. You're right.
I think she's one of the people in the control room in the Truman Show. I think she's like sitting there at one of the desks.
You know what? That makes sense.
And I think
she's also.
Yeah, there you go.
No, she's also the lab tour guide in the first Spider-Man movie, and I definitely remember her
I can
there.
picture that. Yeah. She's just got lots of small roles in like tons of like movies that you've seen, basically.
Yeah. Weird.
So I just instantly noticed their face and went, "Wait, I've seen that face before." And just one of those, like, again, she's like a slightly lesser well-known William Fichtner.
Which, I mean, that's not good. William Fichtner's already the unknown William Fichtner.
Not to nerds like me. So, so he walks in, he sees the camera, and he looks at himself, and again, it's this very obscured like version, because it's not just straight video, but he's like, I'm beautiful, and he sort of smiles to himself, and he looks around, and he sort of takes in the sights, and he goes up to the bar, and there's like a sort of really like, rudimentary android who's just like a puppet, basically, who's serving drinks, and he's like, oh, to think you're one of my ancestors, and he kind of like surveys the crowd a little bit, and then he's like, all right, time to do a hostage situation. And he pulls out his gun.
I think his exact line is referring to the android. He's like, that actually offends me a little bit. And then he just shoots it in the head.
Yeah. And then tells everyone to get on their knees and just starts like a proper full-on hostage situation. And this is after as well. There's like a woman in like the center where there's like a couple of DJs who are playing music on like these weird futuristic synths where you just touch the pads and like guitar and piano sounds are coming out. But like there's this woman in the middle of that, like in like a latex or leather kind of cat suit, and he just walks up and stares at her, and he's like, I was like, yeah, are we going to get to like him being horny? Like, is that something he gets? Does he want to do that?
He jumps down out of the thing and he goes, gravity. He walks up to this woman. Penis.
So like he holds everyone hostage, and like Denzel Washington hears it on the police radio, and they come running. There's no protocol here for dealing with a hostage situation, because before Denzel Washington arrives, like 4 cops just run into the building to try and like shoot him, and Russell Crowe just kills them all, like easily.
No problem. This whole time he's got this strange, and this is a recurring motif, he's got this strange focus on like an orchestra kind of setting, because he's taking all of these hostages and forcing them to scream and cry for help.
He starts conducting them.
Yeah, basically. And he records them on like a synth loop, and then he starts playing those, and he's like, yeah, all right, a little bit higher G flat, let's go with that.
Yeah, he's feeling himself, if you will. He's really getting into it. And he's so entranced by conducting his orchestra of chaos that he doesn't even see Denzel Washington come in behind him. And he just shoots him in the back, like with his entire clip.
Multiple times. Like, he lands every shot.
He just unloads. And this just makes Russell Crowe laugh. Sid just laughs and like runs away, like, haha, like fires some shots back. But
I mean, that being said, as he's running away, he does recognize, like, okay, I can't take many more of these. I am going to run out of juice or whatever's keeping me going.
Yeah, when they get outside and he gets into the car and he's still got all these bullet wounds in him, there's a great moment where, because obviously Denzel Washington's been shooting at the windshield of the car, there's like shards of glass in the dashboard, and he just like picks up a mouthful of shards of glass and eats them, and then his wounds heal. Because, we set this up, that if he just touches glass, he can heal.
That's how I knew at that moment, because we were talking before about Nick Cage, about like, is he a great actor or is he just awful? That's the moment where I knew the version of Nick Cage that Russell Crowe was going for here. Of, sure, I've got the ability to like reach out, touch glass, and just absorb it, or I can swallow it down like rock candy and just eat it that way. And that's so much more entertaining. And
you get crunchy sound effects as he's doing so as well, just to make you feel a bit, ugh, this is bad. And he talks to them over the police radio when they're chasing him here. So they do a whole thing here, and there's like eventually, like, they crash into whatever, and there's an explosion. And I love that Russell Crowe, that Sid, when he's exiting this scene after the car chase has ended, he jumps off the bridge with this like over the top like backflip, like he's at a diving competition. He does like a sort of jump backwards, and
he does like a front handstand, just this whoop right over.
That's right. It's like a handstand jump. Yeah, he does the backflip in the VR earlier on. This is the handstand one. Yes, he sort of goes onto his hands and jumps off.
He loves jumping around.
He does.
Anytime he gets the opportunity to jump off something, he'll take it.
Yeah, and it made me chuckle every single time he did, because it was just this chaotic energy to it.
Well, even during that, he shouts back to Parker or something like, "Oh yeah, we'll meet again" or whatever, and then he gives this like cartoonishly childish giggle. He's like as he jumps off, and it's like, what is this guy doing? Like, and mind you, this entire time that he is in a firefight, that he's running people off the road, doing all this, he's holding in his hand a blue suit that he stole off of a man in the club because he liked the way it looked, and he never cast it aside. He never thought, I don't need this right now. He's like, this is my style. I want this.
Even as he was walking into the club, he was like looking at people's suits, because his entire goal, his intention for going to the club at all, is that he wanted a colorful suit, because that's what he liked to wear in the VR. So he wanted colorful outfits, and that was his goal. So he got his suit and he kept it. Also, when he was in the car chase, at one point, he basically just decides that, oh, Joe, it'd be more fun with this car chase if I started ramming into civilians. And he just starts running, like just ramming into them, just because he wants to. And I'm like, I love the chaos of this guy. I love just that he just like, I'm in the mood to cause more damage, so I'm just going to.
I feel like he was almost kind of auditioning for the Joker in a lot of ways, because like it strikes that right tone here of, it's terrifying. He's willing to kill without any sort of note, but it has to be this level of humor to it. He's not just going to do it straight and like mercilessly.
Yeah, he loves being a psychopath. So, yeah, and then the next time you see him, it's that cut I mentioned earlier where someone says, oh, we have to figure out what would he do now that he's free. Cut to, you can tell by the way I walk my walk, I'm a woman's man, well, time to talk. And it's just like, and it just leads from one thing to the other, where he walks up to he's in like a market, and there's an electronics store with a bunch of TVs, and he notices that there's a news report talking about what he did at the nightclub, right? And he's like, oh, I want to hear this. And he starts like turning every TV in the store to the same channel so he can hear it from every TV.
I mean, it's also just so, like, he wants, like you said, he wants an audience. So he's putting it up there just like, everything is me. Look at that. I'm everywhere.
So we're hearing this, and we get like little clips of different people at the club like saying how horrible it was, or the reporter talking about how this ex-cop's like chasing him or whatever. And he turns like one TV that was on like the MMA fight, and this guy was watching it, so he just turns it back. And when Russell Crowe notices that he switched it back, he just switches it back again. And this guy's like, dude, don't mess with me, or whatever.
And then Russell Crowe turns around and he's like, why not? I want to know why not.
And then he snaps the guy's neck.
Yeah, just snaps the guy's neck, let him drop. And then there's a guy with a camcorder who recorded the whole thing. And Russell Crowe just like gives a little smile and a thumbs up and walks out.
He's delighted that it was being recorded, as everyone else is just sort of standing in horror. And basically he notices the MMA fight. He sees this large crowd, and like the commentator saying, oh, this crowd is raucous, there's still a few seats left, everyone's watching. And he's like, oh, I think I'd like to go there. And he just walks off to go to this arena to go and crash it.
And then meanwhile, we don't even get an in-between scene where they learn that this happened. Denzel Washington and crew are at the place. They see the videotape from the camcorder man, and Denzel Washington immediately picks up on, oh, he noticed that MMA fight. I got to go there now, and just runs off.
Yeah, where is that? Oh, it's like 10 minutes away. All right, fine. I'm taking off on foot. I'm getting there. And we just get, again, this is what I was saying about there's just this escalation of like Sid just doing crazy stuff, where he does this thing in the video store. He then goes to the arena, and he walks up to the upper balcony, and he's sort of looking around. And one of the things is they mention on the TV, and this is maybe when Denzel Washington and the cops are at the crime scene, is that they mention on the MMA fight that for some reason one of the cameras has just been focused on this like hot woman in the crowd for like several minutes. Like they're not changing the shot for some reason, and the commentators are even like, this is weird, someone in the video booth really likes her. And we cut to the video booth, and they're all dead. Russell Crowe has like, the reason why it's not changed is because they're all dead.
Yeah, and that's something he does again later on, and all I can think is, bro, you need a good editing team in the back if you want to get on TV. If we hold on one camera, it ain't gonna work.
I think he'd learn that eventually, if for his audience sake, for his show. But he's not quite there yet. He's still technically just got born like recently, so he's still learning.
He's still got like a little bit of a Hitler Manson mindset of technology. We got to bump that up a few years.
So he walks up behind this woman that was on the camera, right, in the crowd, and just like pulls her hair back. And at first she's into this because he just kind of whispers into her ear, "Oh, you're beautiful, where the camera loves you."
Yeah, the camera loves you. Everyone here loves you, and I'm gonna make sure everyone pays attention to you.
I'm going to make you famous. And she seems quite into that, even though her boyfriend who's standing there is like, "What's this guy doing?" But then Russell Crowe takes it a step too far. Sid licks her neck, and this guy's like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And that's where she sort of freaks out. Like, "Okay, you just crossed it. Like, I was up for the flirting, but you just crossed into creep perv territory." And this guy tries to fight Russell Crowe, and Sid, maybe a little fighting first, but he throws him off this upper balcony, and this guy just goes flying all the way down to the side of the ring.
He pulls a little Matrix even before that, where like the dude's throwing punches, and he's just like effortlessly just swaves his arms and moves the punches out of the way, and he's giggling while he does it. He's having so much fun.
And Michael Buffer's like, we need like medical assistance next to the ring. Some guy's just fallen.
Yep. And then I don't even know what he was planning on doing, but he takes the woman, makes sure they're in camera, and looks like he's about to bite through her jugular. Like he's about to kill her to some extent with his mouth at her neck.
Yeah, it looks like a vampire death.
Yeah, and then some security guard shows up and interrupts it, which causes him to... This is where you got the double backflip off the top rink, but with a specific showing of him hitting the ground, like flat on his back, killing most normal people, but he, being Silicon, just reshapes himself a little bit and gets right back up.
Yeah, this over-the-top jump. I did love the shot of him landing. It was actually kind of a nice, weird visual of just seeing the thud, like, flat on his back.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I think they did a good job of merging it together as well, because you get obviously the green screen shot of him falling, and then the shot where he actually picks up off the ground. It's all one continuous looking shot.
Yeah.
But when he hits the ground, he hits it with such force that his entire face kind of like warps and shakes a little bit, and it was a really good way of blending those two together.
I also think from a filmmaking point of view, it works really well, because they do that thing like you said. He's like, before he lands, it goes to like a close-up of his head. And it's kind of like, he's, like you say, he's green screened, like his head's green screened against the background as he's flipping through the air and falling. And it obviously looks kind of unnatural in this kind of like, in the same way that if you attach a camera to someone's chest and have them walk and they're kind of perfectly still as the background's kind of shaky, it has that kind of same disorientating effect. But it kind of works for Sid because he experiences the world differently from humans because he's not human. So it's kind of this idea that because he's like more like... You know, like a human being falling is like, there's so much adrenaline that you're sort of taking things in incorrectly. You're not processing things quite as calmly as you would normally, like when you're just sitting in a chair. But because he's a silicon android and he's like an AI, the idea that he's still just perfectly taking in everything that's around him, so he's perfectly calm in the middle of the shot, kind of works. Like it works from like a perspective of what he is, to have this kind of weirdly smooth version of the fall kind of thing.
I mean, I think it reminds a lot of you know, like if you do have any sort of AI, like companion bots or whatever nowadays, how when they talk or when any of those AI things talk, it's always very like in the middle of the frame, looking dead at you forward. And I think it reminisces of that. And obviously that's a modern day thing. So it's nice to see that even back here.
Yeah. And Denzel Washington obviously shows up and at this point kind of sees him down there, and Russell Crowe does spot him. And the chase ensues.
Well, I mean, it's a very short chase. They escape the building, they go upstairs, and then there's a train that Russell Crowe blends into the crowd of temporarily.
Yeah, they go up to like a train platform outside, like it's like a monorail, and or at least on an elevated track. It may not technically be a monorail, but it
says metro.
But there's a great thing here where they're playing like cat and mouse, and Denzel Washington's trying to find him, and he can't see him. And there's a great moment where he's like walking down the side of the train and looking in, trying to find him. Where in the foreground, Sid just kind of does a spin across the camera into the train. And it's just this like, obviously he's wearing that bright sort of blue-purple suit, so it's really easy to spot him. But it's like such a little surprise that he just sort of goes wee past the camera. And it
felt like such like a Twin Peaks moment, like early Twin Peaks moment to me.
But I was into that, but then of course Russell Crowe, even though he could just get away here, yells out to him and has grabbed a hostage, a woman that he holds up, and he's like, "Hey, what? Yeah, you got to shoot me! You got to shoot me, Denzel! Come on,
don't do it! She's right here.
So
don't shoot."
Denzel takes a shot to try and get him, and it looks like he shoots this woman, and this woman falls to her death, and it's this like tragic moment. And what stuck out to me about this scene is that there's like a random, like, you know, civilian, right? There's a woman, right?
Yeah.
Who shouts out, "You shot her in cold blood." And I want to take umbrage with this woman, right? Now,
Yes.
if you want to argue that as a, you know, as a cop, whatever, if we're calling him that, he's a kind of is, he's got a badge at least.
Yeah, he's got his badge back. He's a cop.
If you want to debate that he made the wrong choice by trying to take a shot while this woman was a human shield as a hostage, absolutely criticize that choice. But I don't know if you can call it in cold blood. I don't think you can, like, the intention of the shot was not, I want to murder this woman.
Yeah. This is, honestly, this is from this point on where I think there was the most potential to be done with Denzel Washington's character and the most letdown. I think from this point on, where he's kind of got this fugitive angle to him and like, oh, do they believe him? Do they not? It feels like they set up a bunch of stuff and then immediately throw it away over and over again.
It's more underwhelming. It's probably the most underwhelming thing in the movie is what they do with Denzel's character from this point on, because the fugitive thing just kind of feels generic. It doesn't really feel like it matters that much. It doesn't get used in a way that,
and it's not
feels
set
like a
up
big deal.
well enough either. Like you said, it's this woman who's like, all of a sudden, she's the representative of, I've got 15 witnesses who are all saying that he shot her, so he's definitely guilty. Completely ignoring this whole thing of, he was in the line of duty, he made a judgment call. Whether it was right or not, that's debatable.
Yeah.
But
Well,
this was absolutely him trying to get the perp.
Which, don't get me wrong, I get why it looks bad that he's been let out of prison. The whole thing is that, oh, maybe he'll go out a line and just start killing people because that's what he did in the past. Like, I get why it looks worse for him versus another cop. But they also, like, immediately, what's her name? Madison's like, hey, I checked the body. The bullet came through her back and came out of her chest. That means that she was shot from behind, which means that Russell Crowe did it and just wanted to make it look like Denzel killed her.
Yeah.
Which would make sense with his crazy character. And the captain is like struggling to believe this at first, although he does admit in like the next time we see him that he's like, yeah, we got reports from the lab. You were right about that bullet. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
But even then, they're unwilling to back down because he's like, well, the DA is still willing to press charges because like this has just gone off the rails.
The only part I kind of liked about this, right, of this whole thing, because it's definitely the weakest part of the movie in terms of like stress. Every time we cut to Russell Crowe at this point, I was still loving it. Yeah. But the whole fugitive thing's whatever. This doesn't really come together. But the one thing I did like is we find out that this thing, the chip they planted with him, the tracker, also has like a little capsule of like poison in it or whatever that they can set off whenever they want. It's something that they do with whatever prisoners, do they always give it to them? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously this is like horrific when he finds this out and all that. And by this point he's free because Sid actually breaks him out of the prison transport van because he wants him to be on the loose and to make it look like he's even worse because, oh, look, you've killed the guards now. Because Sid did that. Anyway, so he's on the loose. We find out about this capsule thing. It's kind of like a Suicide Squad style kill switch, effectively. The one part of this I kind of liked is that when the captain, who didn't know about this, is told by Madison, I do kind of love that he just goes to the control room at the company who put the chip in, while Victor's in there, and the captain just walks in and starts wrecking their computers with the chair. I love the idea that he's like, look, obviously we still have to sort out exactly what went on and who's to blame for what, but you're not killing this guy that I like considered like a friend and like like you're not doing that. So he just goes like that's the because it was the one point in the movie where I felt like that captain character like made a choice where I'm like, okay, that was actually something likable you just did, because up until now you've just been generic captain man and that's all you've been.
Yeah. No, character wise, I think that is a strong point for him, and I do like that moment of him. It's almost a Gilligan cut, like the ironic smash cut, where you see him on the phone learning about this. Smash cut to them about to press the kill switch, and he just runs in, starts shooting up everything, throwing chairs through screens. It's a solid moment. My issue with it is this entire thing of reveal of neurotoxin, him on the run, and then destruction of the thing that could kill him is at most 3 minutes. Like it is picked up.
Long.
It is immediately dealt with, and it was never a problem again after that.
You could easily cut out all the stuff with the neurotoxin and the chip and not really feel like you've missed anything in the story. It would just save 5 minutes.
And that's how I feel about a lot of plot elements from this point forward, and even stuff that has happened already. As much as I love the fact that Russell Crowe is chaotic and he just goes to these places and shows up, I feel like from a screenplay perspective,
all of these things should have gotten a little bit of setup beforehand. For instance, we'll get to it in a moment, but the final place he goes to is a TV station that's airing this special that's going to be airing across the nation, and everyone's paying attention to it. I don't think they mentioned the special at all up until like 2 minutes before he's about to go hijack it. Like, I think that's the sort of thing where you can easily set this stuff up earlier on by saying, and be sure to tune in Friday for our special presentation. And that would make it less of a sudden, oh, now we're here. It's going to be something that we knew we were leading to.
I don't know. I'm conflicted on that complaint because I think as far as like things not being set up go, I think there being a TV special is not something you have to set up. I think it's a simple enough thing to... don't get me wrong. I get why it would feel nice and neat if there was a line referencing it earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this particular case, because of how chaotic he is, it almost works with how chaotic he is, that like you can't even predict the next place he's going to go because he just... Like we cut to something that briefly sets it up and then he just goes in.
But that's just it. They do predict where he goes. Denzel Washington's able to look at the tape, see that he saw the MMA fight, and says that's where he is. So clearly it's not that chaotic. It's just he follows his whims and whatever he sees to get the bigger audience. And I think if you set that up earlier on, even the MMA fight, I didn't need that one as much. But this TV special, I think that those things are perfect to tell the audience a little bit moving forward, this is the direction we're going in. So that way, when we get back to the TV studio, it's not just suddenly, here's a new location, and you may or may not be familiar with it. It's already set up. It's already in the minds of the audience. And it's just less effort on the part of the audience to figure out what exactly here is happening.
I mean, I don't think it takes any effort in the audience. I think you're right. I think you're right on paper in a completely objective sense, but I think you care too much about it, if that makes sense. Like,
when you do this often in the reviews that you accuse me of caring deeply about it. I'm stating my issues. I'm not staking the quality of the movie on the fact that they didn't say whether or not the TV station existed.
Like, would setting up and teasing the TV station or the special airing earlier in the movie be an objective positive? It would, right? I'm not arguing that. I think it would be a nice little thing, but I don't think it's that big a deal either, where I don't think anything hinges on it or anything like that. I never felt like stuff like there's because there's something in the end of the movie where I'm going to rip it apart for not setting something up. Right. I don't think this is a big deal because the TV stations exist, live specials exist. It's not like a huge thing.
No, it's literally just because they are bragging about it being like half the country is watching or something like that, like millions of people are watching. I feel like that's a special enough thing that should have been broadcast before. But again, I'm not saying that it's necessary for the scene to work. It's just something that I thought of as I was watching it that seems like an obvious fix, something that is very clearly an improvement and yet not here.
And Russell Crowe, of course, just kills one of the people on the show, like in the head, like just to start off his little reign of terror during that bit.
Before we get into that bit, though, this is the part where we finally get the full backstory reveal of what happened to his family, what happened to his arm. This is while he's sitting in the truck.
Of Denzel Washington, yes.
Yeah, before he's busted out by Sid.
Yeah. I don't mean to be pedantic when I do that, but it is confusing sometimes to an audience, I think, if you just say like a pronoun and you've not actually set up your new subject for what you're talking about.
The only character who lost his family and arm in this movie.
I know, but I'm just,
Pete, I think you care a bit too much about this. So,
I do. It's my show. I do care about it.
Oh, seriously? All right. Sorry, I thought after, however many episodes we've done together, maybe I had a little bit of credit here.
Look, you're an important guest star, okay?
Oh, okay. Do I get guest starring payments? Is that something I can get out of this?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Yes.
But yeah, no. So the full reveal of the backstory, and it's literally just the one night. We don't get to see any of like the predecessing.
No. We've had enough kind of hints of like from what the captain said about how okay, Denzel Washington was investigating this guy who was this like not assassin, but he did like
political terrorist is the word they use.
But sometimes assassinations. It kind of depended on what was happening. But Denzel Washington was looking into it and was kind of getting in the way and sort of like saving targets from potential thing. And this obviously pissed off the bad guy. And he targeted Denzel Washington, kidnapped his wife and daughter, had them held. And this is the flashback we get: is Denzel Washington has found them, right? He's coming for them. but the room's been wired with an explosive. So when Denzel Washington opens the door, it sets off the explosive. And this is all happening whilst the bad guy's doing an interview for TV. A journalist has agreed to come and talk to him.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how much he hates this cop and how, he targeted me. He started this game. And it turns out he has a catchphrase, which this felt like they should have set this up earlier, because it felt like it got introduced like 2 minutes before this flashback, where he's like, hey, say your catchphrase. And he's like, yeah, this one's for you, Grimes.
Yep.
So, yeah. Or Barnes. Sorry, Grimes is the killer.
It's Barnes.
Yeah, Barnes is Denzel Washington's character.
I wasn't at 100% positive on that, but I was pretty sure. It's I feel like, again, there's the hint of a thematic element here. Like I said, there's been a lot of stuff going on about people being very entrenched in violence. Like, we got the whole thing of when Sid takes over the news studio, all of the ratings immediately jump. We got this MMA fight being this big centerpiece of the whole thing. There's this idea that people are too attached to violence in this future. And I feel like this is the news interviewing this political terrorist and asking him to say his catchphrase is also trying to add to that idea.
That's absolutely what this is. In fact, I would argue this is the only thing in the movie that feels heightened. You said people are obsessed with violence in this future. I think everything else it does in this movie is basically just, this is how we are obsessed with violence now.
Right. And then this is the only thing that's over the top past that level. I just wish they did like a little bit more with that to show like how skeevy this news report actually is, rather than it being closer to something like Lois Lane interviewing Lex Luthor, where it's just like, oh, I'm trying to get the scoop on you being a dick. This feels like it's trying to skate that line of people are really interested in you because you're saying the things that no one else will say.
Yeah, it's all underdeveloped, which is a shame because like there is potential here. But we get the big reveal though, is that like, so this explosion happens while he's doing the interview and he said his catchphrase, but to his surprise, Denzel Washington has survived. He's just lost an arm. So he comes in just like with his gun, starts killing all his henchmen, coming after him. Like,
and Grimes is genuinely surprised. He thought Barnes would be dead here.
He's got his eyes focused on his target, and to a point, Denzel Washington does say to like the journalist and her cameraman, stay down. Like, he's at least there enough mentally, even in his like like just absolute like reign of terror that he's on right now in his headspace. Yeah, he still has the wherewithal to say, stay down, stay out the way, and he goes after the bad guy. And he does. He walks up to the bad guy, he shoots him a bunch of times, but he hears a noise because the cameraman and the journalist have sort of like came up relatively behind him to get a shot of what's happening, and he turns down and instinctually, without thinking about it, fires off rounds and kills these two people. And I like this reveal, and I think that it does add weight to like okay, there's actual guilt, because if it's just killed the guy that murdered his family, like there'd be no like shades of grey to it, because it's like well, he kind of had it coming. Like, I'm kind of on board with that. Him accidentally also killing a couple of civilians who, admittedly, they were interviewing this bad guy, so I'm not completely seeing them as innocent, but relatively innocent, does add some like guilt into it. Does add some like. I know you want to critique it, and I agree with the critiques. Maybe it's too late in the movie, or maybe it could have been more developed. I do like on paper, though, this element being added into it. I just don't know like where it should have been added in, because I do understand why they left it to this point. I think like given is that part of the backstory after thinks he might have killed an innocent woman again, and sort of revealing that's a big part of it, is this idea that someone innocent dies because he is too reckless, or he whatever, he gets too locked in. Like, I think that's a good idea. I don't think it's executed, in a way that makes it work in this context.
Right, and I agree with all of that. I think what I was looking for, because it's very much blink and you'll miss it. Like, he goes through, he kills all the terrorists, and then very quickly it's just turn around, you see him fire one or two shots at these press people, and then he comes back. He snaps back.
Do you think a longer scene where we saw him like look down at the bodies and really like wrestle with the weight of what he's just done would have helped?
I'd say either that, or we just get little like snippets of the court process afterwards of showing how he was like vilified despite the fact that his family was killed.
Actually, do you know what I think would have helped actually? Oh, maybe one of the problems with it is that after the incident on the train, right, where this woman has died, he very quickly, when he's confronted with his captain who's looking at him like, oh God, I can't believe you did this, Denzel Washington like plays it like, I'm confident I did not shoot that woman. Like, he plays it as if he knows. And maybe what would have been better here would be if he actually gets kind of broken and upset and says, please tell me I didn't do that. Like, you know, maybe if he actually thought he did for a bit, might have worked better.
I think allowing him to be silent on that, or even if he's confident that he didn't do it, just cut out the part where the woman goes and looks at the body and sees that it wasn't him, or that the exit wound came from the wrong side.
So let us think he might have.
Yeah, let us think he did it. Because as soon as we see that, we're like, oh, he's innocent. Okay, no problem then. Like, have us as the audience wrestle with, okay, he might deserve to be off the streets for this.
Yeah. But I'm not even thinking of that side of it. I'm thinking more just the idea of like the weight of his guilt landing. So, you know, I think there's other ways they could have like maybe given us this information or fleshed it out a little bit that would have given it a bit more impact. I do think it's the right choice to add that element in, because it did make it like, you know, it gave it more depth than just he, you know, went and killed the bad guy. And yeah, it's obviously brutality, but like,
yeah, because like if they said he's serving 17 years or life or whatever in prison for killing these bad guys, I'd be like, okay, so the justice system is a joke then. Like, that's absolutely a joke. That's news crew, that's what makes it okay.
Yeah, but that said, though, there is also the implication early on with, like, you know, someone let that white power guy out to try and kill him, and then all the guards beat him up and blame him for it. So I think there might very well be of like, oh, we're going to have the black man take the fall for all this. You know, there's definitely some racism at play going on in the system here.
Yeah, no, skipping ahead ever so slightly to when we get the chase scene through the, I guess the labs or whatever it is, maybe a TV station. That is, I got absolute vibes as the helicopter's trying to shoot at Denzel because he's still in this fugitive state. I'm like, yeah, this is a race thing. This just feels like a race thing more than anything else.
I get that he's still technically a wanted fugitive, but there's a man with hostages broadcasting the murder of innocent people upstairs. Like, why are we not focusing on him?
Same floor, literally like 20 feet to the left of where this helicopter is shooting is Russell Crowe. Maybe focus on that.
It's not until the captain guy like demands the helicopter like pull back that all that stops. But so Russell Crowe wants to broadcast killing people, right? And the ratings go through the roof, as we see. And maybe that's even a little bit unrealistic, is how quickly they have the data of like all the bar charts going up. I'm like, ratings like aren't that quick, but I mean, it's the future.
Yeah,
so
I'll take the future, whatever.
But yeah, but he also reveals here, because there was a quick scene where we saw him go to what's her name, Madison's house, and it's like, because obviously as soon as they introduced that she had a daughter, as soon as they had that realization, I'm like, okay, she's going to be in danger later, and Denzel couldn't save his own daughter, but he's going to save her daughter, right? That's obviously what they were going to do. They're just, you know, painted all over their faces.
This is absolutely set up in screenwriting 101. You get the cute little kid to the guy who lost his daughter, and immediately there's that bond of you must be protected.
So there's a whole thing here when Russell Crowe is like saying what he's going to do. He says, our first contestant, and then it, you know, he's got like a shot of like her tied up. Her mother just starts like screaming no at the TV screen, and Denzel's like, I'm going to get her back, I promise you. So that kind of sets up her stakes for a big third act thing. So
this is where Denzel basically says, like, look, I'm going to go get your daughter. I need you to find the building owner and cut all the phone lines, because he wants an audience. We need to remove that audience.
And he's got people phoning in, because he's asking the audience to make requests. What do you want to see? Hangings, shootings, stabbings, poison? Take your pick.
I love his last one where he's listing it off like that. He's like shooting, poison, stabbing, hanging by the testicles.
He's really into it. So, I mean, Denzel gets to him, of course. Russell Crowe gets upset when his phone lines get cut. Actually, probably, like, I won't say it's my favorite bit of the performance, but I really love the anger he had in his voice as he yelled out, "Where are my phone lines?" Or something. You know, because he says it twice, and the second time has this, like, this rage behind it.
Oh, yeah. Because it's literally all he wants. Like, you immediately get that as the character. He doesn't care about any of these people's life or death. All that matters to him is that people see him do it. So, there is one bit that I want to say before he gets the phone line cuts. Denzel Washington, just literally seconds after he's done saying to Maddie, hey, I'm going to get your daughter. He walks towards the building and like
15 police officers are like, hey, that's our fugitive, and just start shooting at him while this hostage situation is going on in this upper building. And I cannot believe that is a good use of resources.
Yeah. Also, Linda Meyer's showing up to worship whatever Sid's doing, and Madison sees him, pulls out her own gun, and starts like making demands.
Yeah, just like, tell me where my daughter is. And he's like, I have no idea. And so she just pistol whips him.
Yeah. So obviously there's a bit of a chase. Denzel shoots Sid, a bunch of times and all that. Obviously, I think the big thing we want to talk about here, though, is how this like ends, because they get up to the not quite the roof per se, but well, I did get to the roof actually.
Yeah.
So there's a whole thing. They chase up. There's a lot of hitting, a lot of shooting, a lot of dodging. Russell Crowe acting crazy, your usual stuff, right? Backflips galore. In fact, at one point he jumps up into the ceiling. Like he jumps into a ceiling tile. It's like a fun little bit.
Yeah.
But so
the entire time he's being shot and like leaking this blue fluid as well to show that Denzel's clearly got the upper hand here.
Yeah. And we've seen throughout, he gets a hand cut off, or he gets shot, like he touches glass, and like these CG blue nanobot tendrils sort of come out and reform his hand from the glass, right? So, but we're up on the roof, and there's like no glass anywhere, and it's like, oh, well, how's he going to do a thing? Blah blah blah. And we do this thing where they end up like teetering on or whatever, but they end up falling down. He gets pushed down and goes through a bunch of like windows into like a glass table. And
they
he's
do
like,
Die Hard and like swoop in through the window.
And he like, so they go in, right? And he's landed so hard that his arms and legs have all just come off, right? He's lying there, but I was thinking, but he's like lying on like a pile of shattered glass. Like surely this is a thing. And he does start to reform. Like, the tendrils start to come out and all that. And Denzel Washington is asking, "Where's the girl?" Because the only person who knows where she is him. They need to know. But when he starts to reform, and he's clearly just going to be back to normal in like a minute, once these nanobots have had time to do all this, Denzel just has to make the call, and he has to like stop him right there, and he pulls out his he punches the back of his head and rips out the data crystal. And then there's a weird cut where I thought the movie was jumping the shark. Like,
I was so confused by this moment, but I actually kind of loved it, because this is Liedermeyer who comes in real quick. It's just like, well, You took away our only chance. There's no way we could ever find the girl now. And Denzel Washington looks up, and I swear to God, for a moment, my brain actually inserted a game over into this movie, because then it immediately cuts back to about 4 minutes prior in the middle of the rooftop fight.
Yeah. And I thought, wait, what's happening here? I was so confused for a second. But this is actually like probably the smartest thing the movie does script-wise, is that we haven't done the VR stuff for so long that it wasn't even in my mind. So Denzel Washington gets killed here. He gets thrown off the roof and he falls all the way to his death. We see him land on the ground and blood spurt out, and Sid's like, ha 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 ha, and he's like, he's cackling. Madison shows up on the roof and he's like cackling to her, and she's like, please tell me where my daughter is. But then it cuts down to Denzel Washington and he just gets up, and I'm like, oh, I realize what they've done here. And there's just this moment of realization where like, they've tricked him into thinking that they're still in the real world, but what they've actually done is they've put his data crystal back into the VR, and they've just recreated the final fight and have him win in the hopes that he will just like gloat that he's got the daughter somewhere so they can find out where she is to save her. And this is like something they did on Star Trek with Moriarty, who was like a VR, from the holodeck, like this AI who got mad that he was a computer program and wanted to be in the real world, and they ultimately tricked him by making him think he'd been brought into the real world, but he was actually just in a bigger computer simulation. That's what this made me think of. But I was like, you know what, movie? This was a smart trick, because that cut to this was so abrupt, and I was so confused for like 60 seconds. But once they showed Denzel get up, I'm like, I get exactly what they're doing. And then very quickly it cuts to the real world, and like, okay, they're in the VR headsets. Like,
they're running around. They're doing what they got to do.
Yeah.
They show Liedermeyer's there. He's turned to the side of good temporarily.
No, he's not. He only did this because he wanted Sid back. He very quickly starts like beating the captain gets killed here by Liedermeyer. He gets beaten the head to death.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to fully understand Liedermeyer's motives in this. He's too complicated of a character.
Yeah, Lindenmeyer, by the way. He keeps saying Liedermeyer.
Sorry. It just sounds more weaselly to me. Liedermeyer.
You're thinking of Wienermeyer.
Yes, the Oscar Mayer wiener.
I don't know what that is. It's an American thing.
We had this discussion. That was an early episode.
Which is why I
Collector's
recognize the name, but I don't.
Yes.
It's something to do with hot dogs or something. I don't know.
Yes, it is an Oscar Mayer wiener. The wiener is a hot dog.
Aye. so this is going on, and basically, like, yeah, when Denzel Washington shows back up, Sid's like, wait a minute, I'm not in the real world
revealing
anymore.
the location.
Yeah. Because he's mentioned, because it turns out she's just in one of the big fan ventilator things in the roof, right? That's where she is. But it's like, hey, we got you, son of a bitch. You just revealed this. So they pull out Madison. She goes back into the real world. But this is when London Meyer goes daft and starts beating up the detective because he wants Sid to be free. Because they're like, hey, it's time to destroy Sid. We've got what we need from him. Like, we're done with him now.
Yeah, and also Sid's inside the computer, like, chewing out Lynn Meyer, basically saying like, "Oh, you put me back in the box.
That's
what do you do that for?"
That's right. So basically, Lyndon Meyer wants a chance to give Sid a body again and like let him be free. So he kills the detective. Madison tries to fight him, but as this is going on, Sid starts like corrupting the virtual reality again because he can, because that was established in the opening of the movie, and starts messing with the sensors and like just spiking. Like, I think Denzel Washington gets up to 800% sensitivity or something like that, where he's just like clearly just feeling everything. It's like he's in real danger. It's a whole thing.
You get like a lot of it's like a 90s Doctor Strange moment where like the whole world's warping around him, but it's very glitchy and very much 90s CGI.
It felt, this actually felt like the most Lawnmower Man part to me is when he kicks Denzel Washington off the building, but the world starts warping, so he just falls infinitely. That felt like, oh, we've got better CG than we did in 1992, because obviously it advanced a lot in those 3 years because we're in that sort of like quick period of things advancing. So it was like, oh, this felt like you wanted to do the same kind of moment again, but things can look better now, you know, as opposed to that Max Headroom style of like, you know, blocky CG.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it is better. I at least recognize the Russell Crowe heads. Like they all look like Russell Crowe. So
yeah. But ultimately, of course, how actually I forget how does Madison get Denzel out of the chair? Like, how does she take off the headset?
She just lifts up the visor. That's the thing. It seems so simple. It seems like that's kind of why I didn't like the moment, is because she doesn't have to like type on the computer or anything like that. She just goes over, lifts up the visor, and he doesn't like struggle to get up. He just sits up and is just like, hey, what's up? What's going on?
I mean, that's a little bit rushed. For me, the bigger problem I have, right? Because like basically he gets up, he's like, hey, let's go get your daughter. And then the final actual scene of the movie is the rescue of the daughter. And this is the part that I think I had the most I mean, obviously, yeah, we complained about Denzel Washington's backstory and the whole fugitive thing feeling a bit undercooked. Absolutely. But this scene to me at the end, one, it felt tacked on. It felt like I already had the conclusion, and I'm like, I didn't really need like a whole 10 sequence of saving her. Like, I get that they set up that the bad guy likes to, like, you know, booby trap survivors or hostages.
Right. So
that it'll cause, and obviously, yeah, Madison goes to open the door to the thing, and Denzel's like, no, it'll be booby trapped. Like, no, we can't let that happen again. So we get this extended sequence, right? And keep in mind, the metal arm has not come up at all. Like, the only time it came up was right after they told us about it. Like, at one point when he was in the fight in the prison, like the other guy, like you know, like bladed it, so you could sort of see, oh, his arm's fine because it's metal underneath.
Yeah.
But that was it, right? It didn't come up at all. And I was like, okay, you've got this spinning big ventilator fan. He's going to use his metal arm to just like sort of block it. And he kind of does that. But I was thinking it was going to be used in some bigger way. However, he sneaks in, and because Sid's such a psychopath, he thought of every possible way they might try and get her out of this. So there's like lasers that'll sense motion. There's like a timer, which actually that was the other thing that bugged me about this, is that outside the...
Inconsistent?
Well, no, it wasn't the inconsistency. It was like outside the ventilator when he's saying, hey, it'll be booby trapped. And there's like a cop who says, hey, the bomb squad's on the way. They'll be here in 5 minutes. He's like, we don't have 5 minutes. And I'm like, wait, why? Now, it turns out when he goes in, there's a timer. But we didn't know about the timer beforehand, unless I missed something.
I don't know. They didn't do a good job of setting it up, but I do recall a line while he was doing the TV special of saying like, oh, you can watch her die in like 2 hours or something like that. Or like she'll be dead in 2 hours. Maybe that was the timer they were running with, but it has not been anywhere near consistent.
Okay, I didn't realize that there was just a timer on her to die. at that point. I thought he was waiting for request to see how they would kill her.
Yeah.
But
again, I might be misremembering that, but I just have that as a memory.
I think you're right. I think they could have I think just cutting to the timer at one point to show me, hey, there's a countdown to her blowing up would have been useful.
Yeah, I think they need to show the timer on screen when he introduces it, and then show the timer again after he's killed to show that it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
To say that like him dying is not enough to make this.
That's just clunky filmmaking, is not having those to establish that, I think. So him saying we don't have 5 minutes, I was like, wait, why? Why don't you just wait for the bomb squad? But no, it's okay, fair enough. So yeah, uses his arm to stop the fan so he can get in, and he has to be very careful because there's all these trip lasers everywhere. And he goes over to the little laptop that's next to it, and like a little video plays of like, aha, I've thought of everything. Like, you know, he basically does the like from Jurassic Park.
He didn't say the magic word.
Right. So he tries something else. And Sid's head pops up again. Nah, I thought of that too.
And every time he says it, Sid speeds up the timer. Mind you, it was at like 2.5 minutes, but once he's done doing all this, the timer's literally going at a pace of per second, beep, 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 beep. So it should be about, 15 seconds until it runs out.
Yeah, I mean, that's not uncommon for a movie to just not do the timer because it's just a common thing that's hard to edit around. But
right.
So here's the thing. Denzel Washington looks down at his arm and he's like, I've got an idea. And he like opens up like a part of his arm and pulls out this little tube, right, that he takes out and then starts connecting this tube to these little connectors on the explosive device, or the computer connected to the explosive device, whatever it is, right? And he like there's a whole like few good minute here of him doing tense little like tweaks and like plugging it in, and then
he's going like, okay, I hooked it up to the input, but now I need to hook it up to the output. Which one's the output? And he's like hovering over inputs.
He says something like that, and then he's sort of watching tensely, waiting for something to happen. The timer's still going down, but then when the timer's about to get to the end, it glitches and goes back to like 30 seconds, and the video plays again of saying, oh, I thought of that too. And then it sort of distorts and it starts looping, and then Denzel Washington says, it worked. I have no idea what the hell he just did. So here's all the problems with this. One, the arm was set up as a metal arm, so I thought, oh, he's going to use that to protect himself. It'll be something that saves his life, maybe someone else's life. He can block a bullet with it. He can, stop something heavy or dangerous, whatever. The fan blade, right? That kind of idea, right? Nice and simple. At no point did they ever indicate that there was like internals to this arm, really. So him pulling out like a tube from his arm, like a cable, and using that is just random and weird and doesn't feel set up at all. Secondly, he gives absolutely no context for what he is doing as he's tinkering with this device. There is zero context of what he's actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, this is everything I was saying before about some things that are set up and then immediately thrown away. This is the thing that wasn't even set up. I don't know if this was a cut scene. I don't know what's going on. But even when you come down to not even the bomb itself, but like the motivation of what's going on with Sid's character here, him setting up a booby trap is set up. That's not a problem. But this idea that he knows Barnes well enough over the course of this like 6 hours of life to be able to do all of this and say, oh, I predicted you do this, I predicted you that, feels a little bit of an ass pull out of nowhere. But I agree. The far and away worst part of all of this is this tension that it feels like they were trying to go for the cut the red wire or yellow wire.
Yeah, but at least in some primitive way, we understand that cutting certain wires might set the bomb off, might not. We don't even know what he's trying to do here because it feels like he's doing a tech thing. So what's he trying to do? And it turns out he was trying to confuse it or something. And
he said his exact words were, I'm going to hook this part up to the input and the other part of the tube up to the output, which...
But input and output what?
Yeah, I guess it translates to something of like trying to bypass the main loop and essentially short out the timer or something. But it's not coming across as that. It's just coming across as magic in tech form.
Yeah,
like, congrats, you did it.
It feels like there's no logic to it. Now, whether or not it was that way in the script and it's just been cut down so much that it's a mess in the end, or if it was always a mess written down, I don't know. And what frustrates me is that, look, I thought the whole arm was going to be set up so that you lose it later, that he would sacrifice the fake arm to save someone. Right. They made this too complex. All they had to do is say, there's a bomb rigged on the door, the only way out is up through the fan, and he's going to have to completely, like, ruin his arm to, like, hold the fan still long enough for her to climb out. Just have it be that, have it be this quick thing where he's willing to sacrifice the arm to get her out, and it's done quick, it doesn't have this forced, weird, extra tacked-on tension, and it's not, like, this properly unexplained tension at that. It would just be simple, and the arm would feel like it paid off. Now, admittedly, I would still think it would feel weird that he didn't use the arm once in a fight scene, like during, like with Sid in the middle. Like, I really thought that should have came up at some point, maybe even like a couple of times. But at least that would make more sense to me here, is just using it to block the fan, like for an extended period. And it'll only work so long, because eventually the fan's going to rip through it. But he's holding it long enough, and he has to like say, hey, come up now, you've only got a minute here. But you'll be fine as long as you come up, like have the tension be her being scared to like jump through or whatever.
Once it was revealed that little bit towards the middle of third act was in virtual reality, I thought it was going to act like an Inception totem sort of thing, where we get the reveal, like we see earlier on that this isn't actually reality because his arm like bleeds or something, or he actually still has like a physical arm. Something that just it doesn't even have to be used for a plot relevant reason. Just something that allows the audience to know this isn't reality because this isn't there.
When they cut to that virtual reality bit before they revealed it, there was a split second where I thought, are they trying to tell me that this entire movie wasn't really in the real world and it was all in a layer of virtual reality?
Yeah, that was the virtual reality, and this is now it.
And I was almost about to get annoyed at that, and then I liked what they actually did with this. No, that was all real, but like they're tricking him now by being in virtual reality.
Oh yeah, if they reversed the order of that and like the past 4 scenes had just been in virtual reality, I'd have been so pissed off.
Yeah, so and the movie basically just ends with like, okay, the girl's safe, and that's the thing. Once he says it worked, apparently it worked for all of the other sensors, because I thought that just messed with the timer, but apparently the door sensors and all that are all turned off now too.
The pressure plate she's sitting on, you'd think that would just be an easy one to not make computerized, but
yeah, just too complex for what it needed to be. The movie ends with him throwing the data crystal, Sid's data crystal, off the roof.
I love it because it's crystal, but inside is still like a little wire matrix thing. So he throws the crystal off the roof, we see it shatter, and it's like, okay, that's fine, but the wire matrix stays intact. It's still there. And so you're left for just a quarter of a second thinking, oh, someone could pick that up and fix it. And then a car runs over it, just to double down on no one's going to use this again.
Sid is gone. So, yeah, like I think that this weird little tacked on 5 minutes just felt a little too complex for what it was, and it felt like it almost just sullied, like, the conclusion a bit. But the movie ends with like this nice helicopter shot sort of pulling back from Denzel Washington as it spins around the building as the credits roll.
It just to make clear for the audience here, it plays about 30 seconds of like Matrix. It's like techno. It's like techno. Yeah, 90s techno, and then it switches to a ballad after that. The worst transition I've ever seen in my life. It's not even by the time it goes to black. They're still on the helicopter shot as it's singing like...
I kind of love it though. Not because it's good, but because it's so 90s. Because these are two types of music that movies had in the 90s, with the techno of the whole rave scene, and then the power ballads. And that's what this was. It was switching between the two. And I'm like, oh, you're so 1995 movie. You're so 95.
Yep. What you were saying, though, the tacked on ending, I agree with you. I think most of that is completely worthless, but I do think we did need to have the rescue scene so that we could have him make up for the not being able to for his start. Like, that had to happen. I just don't think that they did it the right way.
I like, again, just make it simpler. Make it be a simpler decision and not this stupid, weird, like hacking thing that he has to do. But I think for me, the tension is like finding where she is. Like the picking her up doesn't necessarily need to be that complex. But if you are going to have it, I think just make it simpler would be my.
I think that the best way you could play on it is have it come down to, again, like play up earlier on the judgment call aspect. The idea of he took the shot and he thought he hit that woman, even if he didn't end up hitting her. Have it be here. He needs to make a judgment call, and he's been second guessing himself because of the stuff that has happened before. But if he doesn't make this call, she'll end up dying. And he has to just come to terms with like, I know I'm right. I feel it in my gut. And then he does it.
Mm. Yeah. But that's how the movie wraps up. We have went over 2 hours on this.
I specifically told my fiance, like, I don't think this is going to be a 2.5, or I think we'll be done pretty quick. So I'm about to go get yelled at, but continue.
I mean, it's there's a lot in here. There's a lot to talk about. Like the weird little things it predicts about the future are quite interesting, and obviously the villain is immensely entertaining throughout, and all the crazy situations that are nicely paced out throughout the movie as well. So you never go too long without him making things interesting.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I had a good time, but we'll get into all of our various ratings and whatnot here. Scene of the movie.
I could probably say pretty much any Russell Crowe moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost any time he's left to his own devices is going to be a candidate, but I think ultimately the most that I popped for this movie is going to be that winding back, that awkward quote unquote cut where we redo the scene, but this time Denzel loses. I think that that's the moment where I felt like the movie was doing the most with the things that it had set up properly in a way that made it really intriguing. So I'll go with that.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Oh God, so many choices here. I think the problem is that all the Sid scenes where he's crazy in like a location, whether it be the MMA place, the TV station, the nightclub, they're all kind of equal. So I feel like they're all kind of canceling each other out for being picked in a weird way. But that kind of is the standout stuff for the movie to me. So I'm going to go with the cutting to him to the Bee Gees because it just made me laugh so hard.
Yeah, it's a solid moment. Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. And then just him like killing someone in front of people without even thinking about it. The idea is that dangerous. He doesn't care. There's no reason for him to hold back. Yeah. It makes him memorable as a villain. So I'm going to go with that. I mean, MVP feels like a foregone conclusion here, but go on.
Yeah, it's Russell Crowe. It's absolutely Sid. I mean, from the word go, from literally the first time we see him right up to the end, I think he just nails it in how insane he is and how chaotic evil. He just absolutely makes it work.
Yeah, funny how we had the hero of the first Gladiator and the villain of the second Gladiator battling here in the 90s.
Yep. Maximus would not be pleased.
No. But yeah, obviously it's Russell Crowe. Like, I'm not picking anyone else. It would be insane to pick anyone else. He absolutely owns this movie. All right. Categories. On you go.
All right. I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker through this. Visuals, I think it does a good...
We'll bounce back and forth. But
Yeah. No, that's fine. Visuals, I think it does a good job for the era in terms of special effects and stuff like that. I do think there is an editing problem, but I am curious how much of that is screenplay. I'm still going to attribute some of it to editing, though, so I'm going to end up with this one being, I'll say a flat 7. It's probably a little bit less than that, but I do think that they are competent enough with where they use special effects to bump it up that extra half point for me.
Yeah, no, I think about a 7, maybe a 7.5. It sounds right to me. And that it's not like the greatest thing from a cinematography perspective, but it does do, some of those 90s things with the low angles and the all the cyber tech stuff, the virtual reality, the ripples in the world, and like just all that kind of thing is pretty good. Some stuff feels like it's got a bit more effort than others. Like some stuff just feels like, oh, this is just an arena, it's just a TV station. Whereas other stuff is like, oh, this prison's a little futuristic. This nightclub, well, not futuristic, is very like of the like kind of like this is what the 90s thought the future was. There's all these like weird TV effects and like synthesizers and whatnot.
I mean, the very fact that the entire premise of this movie is the VR is being used to train police officers is kind of exactly of that time. So, yeah, I think visually, I think I like this. Even just something as simple as like the bright colored suits that Russell Crowe's character likes to wear just sort of sticks out on a visual level.
But that said, though, it's not like it's some like tour de force of cinematography, or it sticks out because it has like amazing sequences from a shooting perspective. So I'll say it's good. I'll say 7 out of 10.
Okay. Sound for me, I don't think it did anything really stand out. If anything, I did notice a couple of very overused stock sound effects. Things like jumping noises, and like there was a creaky door sound effect at one point that I've heard a billion times. So I don't think it does anything stand out with sound, and I don't think there's any songs really that really jumped out otherwise, except of course the Bee Gees, but that's more for the striking visual than it is for the actual audio itself. So all in all, it's probably pretty neutral. I'm going to give it a little bit less than, so 4.5.
4.5, that is...
I mean, if 5 straight down the middle, is it not?
I mean, yeah, but it's like straight down the middle's... Like, going under that, to me, feels like it's actively bad sound, and I don't know if I'd say this movie has bad sound.
I just didn't... All right, I got... It's perfectly adequate, but the sound effects really did bother me to some extent, so I guess it is technically above a 5 if you want to go with that route. I'll say a 5.5 then.
I wasn't trying to argue it.
No, because you're right. It isn't actively bad sound. It isn't in that regard. It's just those sound effects took off for me, and I figured everything else being neutral would just put it under. But you're right. It is adequate.
Yeah, at the very least, I do think the song choices at points are not necessarily good, but do fit the movie in a weird like way. But I mean, I'll go a 6 on the sound. I'm not like... It's not great sound. It wasn't like sticking out to me in any way. It's not like I didn't really notice the score all that much. So yeah, just 6 out of 10. All right. Acting?
Yeah, acting. I don't think anyone really gave a bad performance. I think everyone delivered as they needed to. Obviously, Russell Crowe pulled out a freaking, I wouldn't say Oscar-worthy performance, considering what the Oscar rewards, but I would give him an Oscar.
Well, that's the thing. I think you could argue it's bad depending on your point of view, but it's that kind of crazy performance that, I don't know, is it good or is it bad?
Whether it was good or bad, it was what this movie needed. And I think that is the choice of a good actor there to know that's what is needed here.
The actor we deserve, but not the one we need right now.
Yes, exactly. So overall, acting-wise, I think the rest of the cast, perfectly adequate, perfectly fine, 7.5, something like that. Russell Crowe's going to bump it up to an 8. I think it is absolutely at that level for him.
Damn. I don't know. I don't know how much I bump it because of him, though. Just because, like, everyone else is fine, but they're just kind of, they're okay. No one's like...
Yeah, but I mean, I would still say Denzel, like, he's doing a good performance here. His character's not much, but he's delivering it well.
Yeah, like, he's a very... like good presence to have. Like I say, he makes you feel, Denzel will take care of you. He's in a lot of mediocre movies, but he'll always take care of you and make it not that unpleasant an experience. It's just that here he's kind of outshone by the villain, who's absolutely stealing every single scene that he's in.
Right.
So, like, I feel like I'm going to go with a 7 here. I just don't think I can go higher than that, because I don't know if I'm like talking about performances where I'm getting like, nuanced roles or whatever. But absolutely, a lot of that is the absolute crazy performance that Crowe gives.
Right. No, that's fair. Screenplay, script. So this is usually where stuff starts to fall apart on this show. I don't think the script or screenplay is inherently bad, but again, it goes back to that idea of editing for me. I think that there's just some stuff that doesn't quite fit together for me. Some stuff that is set up and paid off a little bit too quickly. And as we said, that third act, the very tail end, is just absolute malarkey. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to what's being thrown out here. Maybe it is better in the screenplay, but what we got presented just didn't work out there. So collectively, I think that this is still going to be above the 5 mark just because of conceptually, I do like it. But it ain't going far, so I'm gonna stick with a 6.
Yeah, 6 is what I was gonna give the script / story. Maybe a 6.5. It's kind of like, I think there's a lot of really cool ideas and there's some smart things that it does, but it's also got those faults, and it's definitely the weakest part is like some of the poor writing at points lets it down. but the core ideas are all very good, which is kind of what's helping prop it up quite a bit, which is also the script. So I you know, you have to kind of balance that out where you can. So, all right, what was with production value?
I mean, it's 95. I think that this movie probably had good production value for the time. I think shooting on location for a bunch of scenes did help. Obviously, there's a bunch of sets as well, but they made the sets work for the aesthetic that they were going for. So it's a little bit of a split for me. I think that viewing it through the lens of 1995, I'd probably end up giving it a higher score than nowadays. But I'm still going to land probably in just a neutral good, like 7 territory. It's not doing anything wrong. It does feel like it has some solid money and people behind it, but it does kind of feel like even at the time, this was going to be something that did better on VHS in that sort of idea territory than an actual theater release.
I mean, the production value is pretty strong overall. I mean, there's an actual car chase with you know, practical stunts happening. There's CG, which for the time was pretty, you know, a big deal to get some CG in your movie. Like you say, there's a lot of location shooting, which is both a pro and a con, because sometimes it does just feel like, oh, it's just the regular present day world with like a few extra tech things, which, you know, it is fine, whatever. But that maybe is a little hindrance to the setting that the movie's supposed to have. But
I'd say, if anything, the most production value came from the first scene. That's where it felt like they sunk it all into, of having this bigger world generated.
Yeah, because it's obviously they went to the effort of having all these extras in the same kind of outfits with them, like walking through. It felt like that had a lot of effort put into it. But you know, they did have scenes at locations with crowds and things like that. You know, there's definitely enough there to make it feel like it is a proper studio movie that had resources where they got to do a lot of things. That's not to say that there's not occasionally something where you can say, oh, they saved a bit of money here with that, or they saved a bit of money with that. But ultimately, like, I can't really fault that too much, though, because that's just using the budget you've got wisely by putting it in the places where you think you need it. So, yeah, I think a 7 is about right here for this. Because it's the sort of thing where it's used well, it's good, but you can definitely see a few of the cracks kind of here or there at some points where it's not even so much that they did something that looked cheap, they just went with something a bit more generic because it would be easier, and that makes it feel less valuable. So
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
All right, well, in that case, what is your final score for Virtuosity?
I'm still going to stand by my initial evaluation, where as much as I enjoyed the movie, and I do think it is worth a watch, I don't think by the end of it, I thought that it was a well-made movie. I still think that it has enough cracks, enough flaws in it, that it comes down to not actually being a very well thought out, well paced. I think that as much as we do have fun with Russell Crowe's character throughout this, I think that having these slogging moments of Denzel Washington stuff and trying to move through there, it just felt kind of haphazard the way it was put together. So I am going to come down a little bit lower than probably you will, but I'm going to stick with probably straight 6. That's where it feels like to me.
Okay. I think I'm happy to go with a 7. And I think the key thing I would say here is that this is a really good schlocky movie. Whereas I think the perspective you've came at from, Moorhan, and why you feel disappointed is that you're disappointed that it's not just a good movie. Whereas I'm coming in going, it's a good schlock movie where I was enjoying Russell Crowe chewing the scenery. I think it's fairly well paced. Some of the sci-fi ideas are actually pretty fun, and they get some odd things kind of weirdly right about the present day, even though, I mean, they were predicted for 1999, so they were wrong in that sense. But, like, eventually, some of this stuff did actually pan out, so...
They got there.
Yeah, I think I had a good time, and I think I would recommend it, particularly on the... Like, you know, I would recommend it in that same way where I'd say, oh, you have to watch this movie because Russell Crowe is an insane villain and he's entertaining to watch. In the same way that I really enjoyed The Beekeeper a couple months ago. And it's obviously not high art, But if you want to see Jason Statham make a bunch of beekeeping puns, right, when he's like, I've got to protect the hive. Someone's got to protect the hive. And then he's talking about the country. He's talking about the entire country. But he's a beekeeper, so he does everything with a pun, like a pun with bees. And he goes, like, it's cinema.
Oh, okay. Directed by David Ayer. I get you now. Okay.
Oh, no, it's way better than anything else he's directed. I don't like any of his other movies.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Probably because he's not trying to make something that thinks it's smart. He's just accepted that he's making a good dumb movie, and he made a good dumb movie. And which is not to say that this is dumb. It's kind of dumb in some ways, but it's also kind of skirting the lines of like cool ideas as well, which puts it into this really interesting position. And I can totally get like just a couple things going left or right would make this feel more like just like an unwatchable mess, but it just kind of like I said, it rides this lightning of just having all these ingredients where I was into it 90% of the time. There was just some things that hold it back from being legitimately a good movie, and then like a couple of things like the very tail end that are just actually kind of actively annoying and frustrating. But
yeah, to me it feels like this was like a group project in school where it was all written by a guy who actually knows his stuff, but the presentation was done by like three jocks who just did a line of cocaine right before they needed to present. Like that's the vibe I was getting from this.
Yeah. So as far as like late night cable 90s schlock goes, I think this is up there and well worth an entertaining watch if it sounds appealing based on what I have said. But don't expect it to be a great, genuine science fiction film. This is coming out in the same era as something like a Gattaca or whatever. Obviously, Gattaca, actual good science fiction movie. This is schlock science fiction, but is a really fun schlock science fiction action movie if you are into the appeal of that. So,
right, yeah.
Yeah, pleasantly surprised. I was expecting to hate this, if I'm honest. I thought this is going to be trash, and it ended up being entertaining trash. So,
I went in with no expectations, and I just kept bouncing around pretty much every time Russell Crowe came on screen. I'm like, do I love this? Do I not? I don't know.
I don't know. I would tell you, I had a good time. So sometimes just the expectations and what you want out of a movie does go a long way. But yes. All right. Well, David's got his homework movie still somehow in a minute, but
Jesus.
Yeah. By all means, go and support us on Patreon. Helps us out a bunch if you do, and you do get some monthly bonus shows from me and David, such as the Criterion Cut, where we review Criterion Collection movies, and Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things ever made. So go check out that. Plus, there's bonuses for other shows. Check out our other podcast, The Collector's Cut, where we do non-sci-fi movies. We go through franchises or actor or director, like filmographies, that kind of thing. So go and have a look. We recently did Bruce Lee season. We've got Mission Impossible season, coming up or ongoing right now. So David, every week, goes back and watches a movie that we did on the show before he joined Ace, and just uses it to catch up and gives a little mini review at the end. So what was this week's homework movie?
This week's homework movie, because I'm trying to get through some 2020 stuff, was the Netflix original. I know, but Netflix original Stowaway.
What? Okay, just for context for the audience.
Yes.
This past Sunday, we did The Electric State, to which David did for his homework The Tomorrow War, and now he's watched a Netflix original movie mere days later. Why have you watched 3 streaming original sci-fi trash movies? Well, not that this one, Stowaway was better than those two, but still, anyway.
I think the better question here is, why did you watch them to begin with, and now I have to watch them on the follow-up?
Because, at the time, The Tomorrow War was a new release.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, now it's not, and now I'm just trying to get done 2020 movies. Anyway, Stowaway, shockingly, not that bad.
That was fine.
I definitely see it as one of those movies that I'm not going to remember in a week's time. It makes like zero impact on the soul, but it is an entertaining enough flick. It's got enough tension, and as much as I did actually listen to the review that you and Tara did, or at least 10 minutes of it, because I got a bit tired of you. But I listened to it, and you made the point of it didn't feel like there were any major character arcs. It felt like everyone was pretty static the whole way through, and that is exactly the feeling I was getting as we were going into this back half. I was waiting for any character to just
do something evil or do something even like kind of bad, but ultimately, beginning to end, these characters are the epitomes of moral virtuous, and they just end up that way as well, with a little bit of, okay, but I really don't want to die. So
okay, I'm realizing what this movie is now. I think I was thinking of a different one, because it's just forgettable.
Yeah.
I remember this being middling. Yes, middling.
This was Anna Kendrick.
I could not have told. See, if you said who's in Stowaway, I would never have gotten Anna Kendrick.
Oh, she stands out like a sore thumb here. There's no way she should be here, but she is in there. Toni Collette, which I didn't recognize her for even a second. She completely blended into this role. And Daniel Day-Kim is also in this, along with lesser known guy Shamir Anderson, who I'm not as familiar with.
Oh god, this is only a few years ago, this movie, and it feels like I cannot. The only thing I remember from this movie is I remember them doing a thing where they go up the middle of the ship, so the gravity shifts halfway through because it's spinning.
Yep. And
them having to deal with the fact that it'll go from like being in a floating to suddenly there's going to be a lot of weight effectively for their experience. And I thought that was a cool idea for a set piece, but that's all I remember.
I thought it was a great idea for a set piece. Full spoilers for the ending. I hated the fact that they have a problem they're trying to solve for the entire movie. They have to think their way out of it. And every single time they're met with just failure after failure, but failures that they can see coming, failures that they are able to predict. And then at the end of the movie, they finally come up with something and it works. And it is absolutely something that's going to solve their problem. And then all of a sudden alarms go off and they say, oh, a solar storm is coming and it's going to ruin everything. I'm like, all right, well, you set up this whole movie being thinking about the consequences. And then it's like, oops, this thing that we never even alluded to just ruined everything that we were setting up. It felt cheap to me. It felt like there was no winning in this movie. And obviously, if that's the way they want to do it, so be it. But I would like the failures to come as a byproduct of character failures rather than the universe just hates you. So there are good moments in it. Ultimately, by the end of it, I was a little bit miffed with how it turned out, but the entire ride up there was interesting enough. So I think you and Tara both gave it a 6.5, and I think I'm going to agree with that, because it's just shy of that good level for me because of how it ends, but everything up until then was at least a good, tense thriller of how do these highly intelligent people deal with an unforeseen problem.
I'll have to trust my rating there, because in hindsight that seems a little high, but I also don't really remember the movie barring that one set piece, so I'll just trust myself, but who knows if it'd be the same if I watched it again.
We'll see what happens when we hit the best of the decade list.
Well, given the fact that I can't remember it means that I'm probably not going to be trying to place...
but you got to see how many movies there are beneath this on the rating scale.
Hey, to be fair, we're doing a top 10 of the first half of the decade. I think we can get to 10 without having to dip down to Stowaway.
Probably not, but you never know.
All right, there you go. So next week on the show, next episode is going to be another kind of recent movie. Not that we did a recent one in this episode, but David just talked about a recent-ish movie.
Yes.
We're doing Caddo Lake, which came out last year, I believe. So doing some more 2020s kind of catch-up of some possible gems or just interesting little films that didn't get covered on the show. Which admittedly is a failing of me paying attention to movies coming out, if I'm honest. But, well, hey, catching up now, and we'll see how that is next week. But that is the show. Thank you very much for joining us for this surprisingly long episode of the Atomic Cinema Experiment. We had a lot to say about Virtuosity, but thank you once again for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.